man gives everything for love, only to end up treated as a backup option. In the end, his deep affection in that person's eyes is not worth mentioning at all. On the third day of Song Yun's business trip, Ha-rin was diagnosed with an intracranial tumor, and it was already in the late stage. He wasn't afraid. What he feared was, if he died, who would take care of that guy Song Yun? Ha-rin stood at the door in a daze. According to the plan, Song Yun would not be back for another 2 days. Even if Song Yun came back, he would no longer be there, let alone his embrace. But as soon as he opened the door, he saw Song Yun standing amidst swirling smoke. Ha-rin forced himself to sound relaxed and asked, "Why did you come back early?" But Song Yun suddenly stood up and grabbed his wrist. "Ha-rin, guess who I saw today?" he said, word by word. "Wai Rutong." Ha-rin's voice went hollow. "Luotong? He's back in the country?" There was a sting in Song Yun's tone. "So you knew all along that he went abroad? Then why did you lie to me back then and say Luotong was dead?" Ha-rin had just opened his mouth to explain, when the next second, Song Yun raised his hand and slapped him hard across the face. "Ha-rin, were you that eager for him to die early?" Ha-rin's vision went black, and he collapsed uncontrollably into the chair. "Can you at least let me finish what I have to say first?" Song Yun pinched his chin and sneered. "Do you think I would still trust you one more time?" Ha-rin blinked. The explanation he had just pieced together was forcibly swallowed back down again. The smile on Song Yun's face was so cold it cut to the bone. "All these years, I dare say I've never treated you badly. Yet you lied to me and said Luotong was dead. You watched me suffer for so long. You won. Are you very proud of yourself?" There were still scars on Ha-rin's fair face. "Song Yun, there is no winning or losing in love. I admit I took advantage of the moment when you were in the most pain. But lying to you that Luotong was dead, that really wasn't what I wanted to do." Song Yun cut him off coldly. "Enough. This act you're putting on disgusts me the longer I look at it." He strode quickly toward the door, but Ha-rin grabbed his arm in one swift motion. "Song Yun, where are you going? It's still raining outside." Song Yun did not even turn his head and directly shook off his hand. "I'll give you 1 day to move out of my house. I don't want to see you again. Disappear from my world." As his words fell, he walked out and slammed the door hard. Ha-rin stood where he was, dazed for quite a while. The color slowly drained from his face, and in his heart he felt a hint of hatred for Wai Rutong's fickleness. But he hated even more his current self, who could do nothing at all. Ha-rin sank down dejectedly in the corner and stayed there until dusk fell. This might be for the best, as if heaven had made the decision on his behalf. He crumpled the diagnosis report into a ball, thrown into the wastepaper basket. Then, as if nothing had happened, he cleaned the room and folded the clothes. He also sorted the food in the fridge and put labels on it. Ha-rin took the house key off and put it on the shoe cabinet. He took one last look at this place that held several years of memories of him and Song Yun. Then he pushed the door open and walked out. "Song Yun, just as you wished, I will disappear from your world completely." A man, for the so-called white moonlight, gave his wife a vicious slap. Only at the very end did he realize that the one who was wrong was actually himself. When Song Yun returned home again, it was already the afternoon of the next day. He had given Ha-rin 1 day, and he really waited the full 24 hours. At this moment, the home was bright and spotless, so clean it shone, everything in perfect order. His first reaction was, "Hasn't Ha-rin left yet?" Song Yun went to grab him with a clear conscience, but the moment he pushed open the door, he found that every room was empty. Looks like he really left. Song Yun fell silent and let out a soft sigh. Out of habit, he lit a cigarette. His heart was in turmoil, yet he couldn't say exactly what he was feeling. That slap had been him being too impulsive. All these years, Ha-rin had always stayed by his side, and he had indeed thought about spending a lifetime with Ha-rin. But Luotong was his bottom line. Yet it was precisely on this matter that he had even deceived himself, and on that point, he could not forgive himself. Song Yun stood up and pulled open the refrigerator door. Almost everything inside had been labeled, but he only felt that Ha-rin was using this method to try to pull their relationship back again. Without even thinking, Song Yun directly tore off all the tags and threw them all into the wastepaper basket. Just then, a WeChat message suddenly popped up. When Song Yun took a look, his whole person instantly brightened. It was his white moonlight, Wai Rutong, asking to meet him. The two of them arranged to meet at a bar. But when they met, he discovered that Wai Rutong already had someone else by his side. It turned out that back then, it was Wai Rutong who had asked Ha-rin to help patch up that lie. Because he was very clear-headed, the two of them were simply impossible. So he agreed to the fake death plan and went far away to America. The more Song Yun listened, the more upset and agitated he became. He raised his hand and roughly raked through his own hair. He suddenly thought of yesterday afternoon, when he slapped Ha-rin without distinguishing right from wrong. Why didn't he listen to Ha-rin's explanation back then? Song-yun grew even more vexed. Once his hatred toward Ha-rin collapsed, it turned into overwhelming guilt that came crashing back on him. He could not wait any longer and suddenly stood up and left. Song-yun wandered aimlessly down the street. Every time they argued in the past, it was always Ha-rin who first lowered his head and took the initiative to coax him. But now that their roles were reversed, Song-yun didn't even know where he should go to find Ha-rin. He couldn't even get through on the phone. Ha-rin, where on earth are you? Beep. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed, and Song-yun still wasn't able to get in touch with Ha-rin. Just then, his phone suddenly rang. It was Ha-rin's older brother, Ha-ryang. Only then did Song-yun learn this. Ha-rin had transferred the 10% of shares left by their grandmother under Ha-ryang's name. In other words, Ha-rin had personally cut off his own way back. Song-yun didn't hide anything and told him everything that had happened between them. After listening, Ha-ryang was stunned on the spot, and his voice grew even colder. Shaolin was kicked out of the family because of you and hasn't taken a single step into the Ha household all these years. But you've always treated him as a backup. Song-yun opened his mouth, but couldn't refute a single word. How could he have forgotten? Through all these years, the one who had stayed by his side without ever leaving, from beginning to end, had only ever been Ha-rin. It had always been Ha-rin. He slumped into the sofa as if drained of all strength, his voice hoarse and trembling. Ha-rin, I was wrong. Please come back. Okay? Carrying that guilt he couldn't put into words, carrying an even deeper remorse. He walked toward the wastebasket as if something were pulling him. He reached in and picked those sticky notes back out one by one. In the end, he came across that medical report. This is? He unfolded it and stared at the line of bolded text. His whole body froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Ha-rin, terminal stage intracranial tumor. The terminally ill boy passed away in sorrow. A heart full of passion was, in the end, worn down little by little until not a single drop remained. This morning, Ha-rin forced himself to swallow half a bowl of thin porridge. As soon as he lifted his eyes, he saw Ha-ryang standing by the bed with a stern face. The light in the room was still fairly bright, but Ha-rin could no longer see clearly. He reached out his hand as if admitting defeat. "Hyung, I was just afraid you'd worry. Please don't be mad anymore. Okay?" Ha-ryang caught that hand. When it came to this younger brother, Ha-ryang truly had no way to deal with him. The first thing he did after taking over the company was try to bring his brother back, but was refused. And now he was this sick, yet still kept it from him. Ha-ryang frowned, pressing down his voice. "Do you even have a heart?" Ha-rin squeezed his hand back once, and in the end, with a hint of acting cute, called out softly, "Young." Ha-ryang suggested sending him abroad for treatment, but Ha-rin knew very well the risks of the surgery. He didn't want to torment himself anymore. He just wanted to quietly live out the rest of his days, and didn't want to spend his last moments lying on a cold operating table. Ha-ryang still wanted to persuade him. Not seeing him, Ju Swo came in to remind him. "The young master of the Song family is here." Ha-rin shook his head, meaning he wouldn't see him. But if he wouldn't see him, Song-yun would just keep waiting. Ha-rin couldn't help a bitter smile. What kind of madness was this from Song-yun? Actually using the same shameless tricks he once used to pursue Wai-ru tongue on him now. Ha-ryang rarely played the peacemaker. You should still see him. The two of them left the room one after the other. Song-yun looked desolate, standing in the lobby downstairs. The whole person seemed especially dejected. After he was given permission to go upstairs, his heart suddenly leapt with joy. Ha-ryang had made it very clear. Letting him go up was to make him force out Ha-rin's will to live. So he needed to perform in a way that would satisfy them. Song-yun's gaze was very steady. "I will." Ha-rin's eyesight had deteriorated very quickly, so that when Song-yun pushed the door open and came in, he could only vaguely see a blurry black silhouette. Song-yun sat down by the bed and held Ha-rin's hand. "Ha-rin, I'm here." But Ha-rin instinctively pulled his hand back. He no longer needed that kind of end-of-life care gentleness. For a moment, Song-yun didn't even know how to begin. He weighed his words over and over for a long time before finally saying, "Ha-rin, I know you're angry with me, but don't take it out on your own body. I promise you, as long as you get better, we'll go register our marriage and stay with each other for a lifetime. Okay?" Ha-rin's gaze finally focused a little. In a low voice, he repeated those two words, "Get married." Song-yun nodded urgently. "Yes, I heard you can adopt children in the Netherlands. Do you like boys or girls? We can adopt two, one to take your surname and one to take mine." Ha-rin called out in a voice so soft, "Song-yun." At this moment, Song Yun bent down and leaned in a little closer. He went on, 10 years ago, when you confessed to Wai Ruteng, these were the exact same words you used. Not a single word different. Song Yun's body suddenly went rigid. His throat felt blocked, and for a moment he couldn't say anything at all. There was a trace of cold mockery in Ha Rin's tone. Song Yun, in your heart, I have always been nothing more than a substitute for Wai Ruteng. Isn't that right? For a while, Song Yun genuinely didn't know how to answer. Ha Rin turned his face away and flatly issued an order to leave. Go. From now on, I have nothing to do with you, and you don't have to feel sorry for me, because I've let go, and I'm free too. Song Yun walked out of the room and, as if completely drained, collapsed helplessly onto the floor. He couldn't leave this place. The moment he left, he would truly have nothing at all. But that still couldn't stop Ha Rin's condition from worsening. 3 days later, Ha Rin fell into a long coma and never woke up again. Song Yun simply stayed by Ha Rin's bedside, replaying every moment they had shared from childhood to now. So, they had known each other for so many years. So, even before he met Wai Ruteng, Ha Rin had already filled his entire world. So, they had walked together through so many important moments, until Ha Rin completely stopped breathing. Song Yun was still clutching his hand in a death grip. No matter how hard the medical staff tried, they couldn't pry her fingers open. Ha Riang grabbed Song Yun by the collar and swung a punch at him. He's already dead. What's the point of you hanging on to him now? Are you planning to die with him? A terminally ill boy is reborn and goes back to 10 years ago. This time, he decides to stay far away from the scumbag, to walk a life path that is completely different. Song Yun stared blankly as Ha Rin's figure disappeared at the far end of the morgue corridor. Ha Rin's chest hurt so badly it went numb, and he could barely breathe. In his mind, over and over again, he replayed that sentence from Ha Riang. The heart that had been empty to the point of aching and tortured to the brink of collapse these past few days suddenly seemed to find a place to land. On the 7th day after Ha Rin left, Song Yun walked up to the rooftop on the 24th floor. He lowered his head and pressed a deep kiss on the photo in his hand. Then he leapt off. In the instant he fell, he prayed silently, if there is a next life. The scene shifts, and Ha Rin is jolted awake by a burst of familiar ringtone from his phone. Squinting, he reached out, groped around, and hit the answer button. A loud, agitated yet brimming with energy voice exploded in his ear at once. Ha Rin, you're still sleeping? I just got off the plane. Hurry up and come to the airport to receive your lord. Ha Rin didn't reply with a single word. He hung up directly, powered off his phone, rolled over, and went back to sleep with his head under the covers, until the call was made through to Ha Riang. Ha Rin was finally forced to get out of bed. Young, you hang up first. I'll call him back. As soon as the call connected, he heard Song Yun roaring on the other end. Ha Rin, did you just fucking hang up on me? Are you trying to end our friendship? Yes. Ha Rin barely hesitated. Song Yun was stunned on the spot. He had just gone to Australia for a while, so why did Ha Rin seem like a completely different person? Ha Rin thought to himself, it really is like being possessed by a ghost, except it's me possessing myself. A week ago, he had coolly realized he had been reborn 10 years into the past, back to the time when nothing had even started yet. Since heaven had given him another life, he would never again tie his fate to Song Yun's. This time, he was going to walk a completely different path. His thoughts were yanked back by Song Yun, and Ha Rin took a deep breath and told him directly. He was going to apply to the top medical college, and he was about to head out to the capital to attend cram school. Studying medicine is exhausting and bitter, and it takes 7 or 8 years. Song Yun was the first to object. He wanted to persuade Ha Rin, but it was like being brushed off outright. I just got back from Australia, and you're already going to cram school? You won't even see me once. Ha Rin only replied with one line, I'm not seeing you. If you're bored, go find someone else to hang out with. With that, he hung up without a second thought. In the blink of an eye, 2 days later, Ha Rin received his physical examination report. Everything was normal. The doctor said there was no problem. It seemed that illness had only developed in the same year, and it hadn't flared up yet. Just then, someone suddenly called his name. He looked up and saw Song Yun leaning against the wall, lazily greeting him. Ha Rin's heart tightened. He was a little surprised, but not exactly. It seemed it was time to reshape Jusuo's worldview. After all, he was his master, and this time, he didn't want to treat Song Yun's words as imperial edicts like before. Song Yun stepped forward in one stride and pulled Ha Rin straight into his arms. We haven't seen each other for almost a month, right? And you're not even going to give me a warm hug. Before he could get close, Ha Rin had already pushed him away. At this time, Song Yun was still a straight guy. In his eyes, this was nothing more than a friendly hug between friends. But Ha Rin couldn't accept it calmly. He had clearly decided to part ways with Song Yun, yet he still couldn't resist the unconscious allure that Song Yun exuded. Song Yun suddenly grew a bit irate and embarrassed. "Ha-rin, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm already letting things slide. I even specially brought some Australian specialties to see you, and you're still sulking with me? What on earth is wrong with you?" Having lived a second life, Ha-rin decided to sever this doomed entanglement once and for all, to live only for himself. Ha-rin was silent for a few seconds before he reluctantly came up with an excuse. "You're too noisy. This is a classroom." Song Yun stared at his serious face and suddenly chuckled. "You want to be a top student? I'm all for it. If you're going to cram school, I'll go with you." He patted his own waist smugly. "I'm being this loyal. Won't Ha-rin be moved to tears?" But Ha-rin slapped his hand away. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm here to study. You staying with me is just a waste of time." Just then, Ju SWO came back holding 2 bottles of iced coffee. It was Song Yun's favorite flavor. Song Yun twisted one open on the spot and took a big, satisfying swig. Ha-rin only gave it a faint glance. "Buy orange juice for me next time, the original flavor kind." He actually didn't like drinking this. He had only gone along with Song Yun's taste at the beginning. Song Yun didn't take it to heart. Instead, he wrapped an arm around both their shoulders. "Come on, let's go back to the hotel." Ha-rin still wouldn't give in, his tone firm. "Song Yun, I'm serious. You should go back." But Song Yun suddenly slapped his own forehead and said that the local specialty he'd brought was still left at the hotel front desk. Seeing that they were about to go overtime, he had to go get it right away. Ha-rin fell silent. Looked like he'd have to remind Ha-riang later not to casually reveal his whereabouts to Song Yun anymore. The scene cuts and we arrive at the hotel lobby. As soon as they heard that the two of them had booked one twin room, Song Yun immediately suggested with a smile, "Use the new single room he just got and swap with Ju SWO." Only then did Ha-rin react, and he refused at once. "Ju SWO is my bodyguard. What are you swapping with him for?" Song Yun raised his hand and pointed at himself for the next few days. "Swap me in as your personal bodyguard." The words "personal bodyguard" made Ha-rin break out in goosebumps instantly. "You think you deserve that? Ju SWO's fighting skills are way better than yours." Song Yun pretended to be very surprised. "So a personal bodyguard actually has to know how to fight? I thought it just meant standing next to you as decoration." Ha-rin was choked speechless. These past few years with Ju SWO following him around, aside from propping up his image, he really hadn't been of much actual use. Without giving him a chance to come up with another excuse, Song Yun simply lifted his arm and hooked it around his neck. He dragged him out by force, grumbling as he went, "I just took one trip to Australia, and when I come back my best bro has ditched me. Isn't that tragic?" Ha-rin couldn't break free, so he could only frantically signal with his eyes. "Ju SWO, stop him, now!" But Ju SWO completely misunderstood. Holding the room card, he walked into the other elevator looking utterly pitiful. Ha-rin almost broke down on the spot. This bodyguard really is just for show, isn't he? In the blink of an eye, the two of them were already in the room. The moment Song Yun saw the bed, he flopped down on his back and let out a satisfied sigh. "I'm so tired." Ha-rin didn't want to see him for even a second. "If you're tired, go back. If you're tired, then get lost and go back." He clenched his little fists in his heart. "Get lost? Don't disturb my studying." Song Yun lay on the bed, propping up her head, staring at Ha-rin with a wronged expression. "Ha-rin, do you really not love me anymore?" Just because that day was April Fool's Day, the boy's confession was treated as a joke from then on. Ha-rin knew very well that the love Song Yun talked about absolutely did not mean that. He forced himself to stay calm and shot back directly. "When have I ever loved you?" Song Yun turned her head to the side, her tone very light. "I clearly remember back in junior high, you held my hand and said you liked me. Said you wanted to never be separated from me for the rest of our lives." Ha-rin's heart skipped a beat. That was the first time he had summoned the courage to confess to Song Yun. Yet it ended up being taken as a joke. But Song Yun actually still remembered. Song Yun looked at him in disbelief. "No way. Ha-rin, you don't even remember what you yourself said?" Ha-rin took the chance to step down, deliberately correcting her. "Who would still remember what they said in junior high? Are you sure it was me and not some girl in our class?" Song Yun suddenly raised his voice, his meaning very clear. There's no way he remembered wrong. "And back then your face was so red, you were seriously cute to death." Song Yun shrugged as if settling accounts. "Forget it, if it hadn't happened to be April Fool's Day that day, I might really have been fooled by you." Ha-rin's vision went black for a moment. No wonder Song Yun had been treating it as a joke all along. Turned out he had just picked the wrong day. Song Yun took out the local specialties he had brought with him. He crouched down and, while opening the box, muttered under his breath, heartless guy. I bought all this stuff to make you happy, and you actually treat me so coldly. In the end, Ha-rin still couldn't bring himself to keep embarrassing Song-yeon over and over, so he could only bite the bullet and ask what he had bought. Seeing that he was finally interested in the specialties, Song-yeon's eyes lit up, and he immediately took everything out excitedly to show him. Snacks, toys, all sorts of things. Aren't I a thoughtful bro? But to be honest, you can buy all this back home too. But Ha-rin's gaze was caught by a small box with a familiar-looking package. Almost instinctively, he reached out, picked up the box, and lowered his head to take a closer look. Yet Song-yeon snatched it back as if shocked by electricity. His voice suddenly tense. This isn't a specialty. I put it in the wrong box. Ha-rin froze on the spot. Condoms? For something like that to show up around an 18-year-old Song-yeon just felt way too wrong. For once, Song-yeon actually blushed, and the more he explained, the more flustered he became. I've never used it. Really? I haven't even opened the package. He turned his face away, sounding both guilty and stubborn. I'll be 18 in another month. I just wanted to give myself an unforgettable coming-of-age memory. Ha-rin sneered as he exposed him. The coming-of-age ceremony you're talking about is just finding someone to take your virginity. Song-yeon exploded. You're almost an adult too. Don't you have any thoughts about it at all? The smile on Ha-rin's face faded away bit by bit. This idea had really never occurred to him. In his previous life, his first time had been with Song-yeon. In this life, he only wished not to be entangled again. Even if he were lonely for the rest of his life, it wouldn't matter. Just then, the room door was knocked on. The person who came was Ju SWO, here to deliver the room card. Ha-rin immediately seized this opportunity to talk to Ju SWO, and with a crisp movement blocked the slightly slower Song-yeon inside the room, slamming the door shut with a bang. Song-yeon inside the room still tried to come out, but Ha-rin had already cut him off. Ha-rin stared at Ju SWO, his tone cold yet very clear. From now on, don't listen to Song-yeon's orders anymore. I am your only master. Ju SWO was stunned by this sudden change in him, but in the end, he still nodded blankly and agreed. Ha-rin smiled as he said goodbye to him. Whether in his previous life or in this one, Ju SWO was someone he could trust. But as soon as he pushed the door open and went in, he ran right into Song-yeon standing naked before him. This was Song-yeon, almost 18 years old. The feeling of youth surged toward him, and the heat of adolescence stirred up ripples in Ha-rin's heart all at once. Since he had already decided to go his separate way from Song-yeon, he could no longer soften his heart. Song-yeon nudged him lightly with his elbow. You were sneaking around outside with Ju SWO just now. What were you two whispering about? Ha-rin shot back coldly. I was talking to my bodyguard. Do I need to report that to you? Fuming, Song-yeon flung the towel onto the bed. He couldn't understand why Ha-rin snapped at him at every turn, when he clearly hadn't been like this before. He deliberately held down his temper and threatened, I've got 2 concert tickets in my hand, and I was going to ask you to go with me. With this attitude, I'll have to reconsider. He hadn't expected Ha-rin to flatly refuse to go. His last life, he had forced himself to like everything Song-yeon liked, but in truth, he didn't love rock at all. Song-yeon hadn't expected Ha-rin to turn him down so decisively. He had already planned everything for them to go together. So was he supposed to go alone now? Ha-rin's tone was firm as he told him to go by himself. Once he went, he wouldn't feel lonely, because he would meet the love of his life in this lifetime. Wai Rutung, the boyhood friend and his white moonlight were finally about to meet in the web of fate, and Ha-rin only wanted to stay as far away as possible. In the previous episode, we mentioned that after Ha-rin's refusal, Song-yeon ended up going to the concert alone after all. Not long after, Ha-rin received a photo sent by Song-yeon. Although the lighting was very dim, he still recognized it at a glance. It was Wai Rutung's side profile. Ha-rin glanced at the photo album storage, said nothing, and directly deleted that photo. Song-yeon's call came right after. Ha-rin, did you see the photo I sent you? There was still lingering excitement in his voice. Well, isn't he really good looking? When he smiles, he's like a crescent moon in the sky. Seriously, he's so cute. Ha-rin let out a soft sigh. In his previous life, the first time he saw Wai Rutung, he had used this exact sentence to describe him. Song-yeon didn't notice Ha-rin's coldness at all, only feeling so frustrated that his chest ached. Someone this cute, why does he have to be a boy? He had originally planned to confess right after the concert ended. Russell. Ha-rin didn't respond, just kept flipping through the book. Song-yeon finally sensed something was off and cautiously asked, Ha-rin, are you in a bad mood? Thinking he understood, he added, is it because you didn't get to see the concert, so you're really upset, right? Ha-rin sneered inwardly. this is not why I'm upset. He shook his head hard again, as if reminding himself he would not feel hurt because of anything between Song-yun and Wai Ru-tung. Song-yun was still feeling regretful. I was so focused on secretly taking the picture just now that I didn't even ask what his name was. Ha-rin silently rolled his eyes. Only when you can see someone again at the start of the term does it count as written in the stars. You can't even avoid it if you try. Ha-rin's indifference finally doused that rush of giddy excitement in Song-yun bit by bit, and he asked in a low voice, "Ha-rin, are you getting tired of me?" Ha-rin's voice was full of exhaustion. "Fuck. I'm doing practice exams. My brain cells are about to be drained dry." Walking alone across the empty plaza, loneliness suddenly surged up in Song-yun, something he couldn't describe or explain. Wasn't there still half a year to go? Why push yourself so hard already? If you overdraw your brain cells too much, it'll really shorten your life. You need to get some proper rest. Ha-rin was a little surprised. It was rare for Song-yun to ramble on like this, and it even sounded like he was seriously nagging him. He imagined what expression Song-yun might have on the other end of the line, and the corners of his mouth unknowingly lifted a little. But the next second he came back to his senses and couldn't help cursing himself. Why am I still this unsteady? In the blink of an eye, the first day of the new term arrived. As usual, Song-yun walked to the door of Ha-rin's house, only to be stopped by a single sentence from the butler. "Ha-rin and the others left half an hour ago." By the time Song-yun, holding in his frustration, rushed to school, Ha-rin was quietly writing out English vocabulary from memory in his notebook. Song-yun walked up to him and slammed his school bag down on the desk. "Ha-rin, what's that supposed to mean?" The noise was so loud that the surrounding classmates all jumped in fright. Song-yun directly questioned him. Why didn't Ha-rin wait for him? Ha-rin unhurriedly handed him the vocabulary notebook. "I have to get up half an hour earlier every day to finish memorizing 50 words. Are you willing to get up early and go to school with me?" Song-yun instantly chickened out. Getting up half an hour earlier in the dead of winter was really killing him. Ha-rin's tone was very calm. He had to take the college entrance exam and didn't want his routine disrupted. To put it bluntly, it meant, don't come and affect his studies. With things said to this point, the meaning of keeping a distance was already very clear. Ha-rin was also prepared to cut things off cleanly at any moment. Song-yun's chest rose and fell a few times. Then he suddenly slapped his palm on the desk with a bang. "Isn't it just getting up half an hour earlier? I can do that too." He stared at Ha-rin. "It's settled then. From now on you're not allowed to not wait for me." Ha-rin was directly stunned. Since when had things between them become something that was settled? Just then, the homeroom teacher led a good-looking boy into the classroom. Wai Ru-tung smiled very obediently and began to introduce himself. "Hello, everyone. My name is Wai Ru-tung. Please take care of me from now on." The boy made up his mind. After helping his childhood friend avoid this calamity, he would immediately draw a clear line. But in his childhood friend's head, fragments of his previous life flashed back at that very second. He looked at that familiar figure on the podium. Song-yun suddenly became so excited that he lost control, slapping Ha-rin's shoulder like crazy. "Ha-rin, look, the guy I met at the concert that day. It's him." Ha-rin was tormented by him to the brink of exploding, turned around and suppressed his anger as he growled in a low voice. "If you hit me again, I'll ruin your hand." Song-yun didn't take it seriously at all, waving desperately at Wai Ru-tung. But no matter what, he still couldn't get the other party to look at him. Things like fate simply don't allow people to resist. Ha-rin should have understood this long ago. Finally, the bell for the main class rang. Just like in his previous life, Song-yun scampered over to strike up a conversation. Ha-rin quietly thought, they may have a gap in wealth, but in the face of interests, they just happen to be equal. They can talk endlessly. That's what you call truly being on the same wavelength. Whereas he has to pretend to understand, just to barely piece together the illusion of having nothing we can't talk about. The ridiculous thing is, he never saw through this even up to his death. Thinking about it carefully now, isn't this just him pushing himself into it? But up to this point, all he had done was miss a single concert. Yet that just had to become the center of their conversations. Ha-rin knew very well that he was not the same kind of person as them. They treated the band they loved as a faith. That kind of obsession was something he could never learn in his entire life. In his previous life, when Wai Ru-tung was working as a waiter in a bar and got bullied, Song-yun stood up for him. After the incident blew up, he was disciplined and put on school probation. Ha-rin really couldn't just stand by and watch Song-yun fall into misfortune. She would help Song-yun this one time, so long as he graduated smoothly. After that, they would be nothing to each other. So, on a certain evening after school, the three of them went together to the bar where Wai Ru-tung worked part-time. The moment Song-yun stepped inside, he inexplicably felt that something was off. "Ha-rin, Did you notice? This place is like a temple. There isn't a single girl. It was too noisy around them. So Ha-rin had to lean in close to his ear and say, "You still haven't figured it out? This is actually a gay bar." All Song-yun could feel was that the ear brushed by Ha-rin's breath suddenly burned as if it had caught fire. Why did Ha-rin's voice have to sound so seductive right at this moment? There was even an indescribable sense of familiarity to it, as if she had come this close to him before, as if a long time ago, he and Ha-rin had already embraced and entangled again and again, pressed so close their breathing went out of rhythm. Song-yun felt the blood suddenly rush to his head, his heartbeat stumbling out of tempo. But in the very next second, those emotions were snuffed out as if someone had pressed a switch, vanishing in an instant. All that was left in his mind was a genuine unwillingness, hollow and tinged with an indescribable melancholy. That cutesy act of Song-yun's, meant to cover things up, was nothing more than a man's little trick in Ha-rin's eyes. In the previous episode, we mentioned that fragments of past life memories suddenly flashed through Song-yun's mind. They disappeared in a flash. He froze on the spot. Ha-rin raised a hand and waved it in front of his eyes. "What are you spacing out for?" Song-yun awkwardly forced down his embarrassment. "You mean Wai Ru-tung? He works part-time at this bar." Ha-rin slightly lifted his chin toward the central dance floor. When Song-yun looked up, he saw under the kaleidoscopic lights of the dance floor a handsome boy in a white uniform carrying a tray. He walked with light steps through the crowded throng, an elegant and appropriate smile never leaving his face. Someone took advantage of the chaos to reach out and grope him. He neither dodged nor flinched, his smile unchanged, perfect as if nothing had happened. A nameless anger shot straight to Song-yun's head. His body moved faster than his brain as he lifted a foot, ready to rush over and beat the guy up. But Ha-rin yanked him back. Ha-rin's expression was calm, but his words were blunt. "Did seeing Wai Ru-tung make you unhappy? Slightly selling his looks is part of his job. Do you want him to resent you for it?" Song-yun lowered his head and couldn't say a single word. He had seen people touch up hostesses before, but once it happened to Wai Ru-tung, he just couldn't stay calm. Ha-rin suggested they sit off to the side first, keep an eye on things and see how it went. Song-yun obediently followed him to sit in a corner, and Ju Swo did his duty, standing behind them on guard. The two people at the next table were kissing passionately while openly groping each other, and Song-yun's ears burned red as he listened. He secretly glanced at Ha-rin from the corner of his eye, wanting to find a bit of, "You can't stand this either, right?" comfort on Ha-rin's face. But Ha-rin had long since gotten used to it. Not even his expression changed. Wai Ru-tung quickly noticed them. Ha-rin smiled and said, "We came to support you." An awkward look flashed across Wai Ru-tung's face. "How did you know I was here?" Song-yun shrugged. Ha-rin guessed. Honestly, I don't even know how he managed to guess it. With just one look, Wai Ru-tung understood that Ha-rin was the same kind of person. Song-yun was still thinking about that moment when someone had taken advantage of Wai Ru-tung, and his tone tightened. "Luotong working here. Do people take advantage of you a lot?" Ha-rin finally couldn't help it and stepped on Song-yun's foot. This guy, whose brain had been scrambled by love, was acting like his IQ had completely shut down. Song-yun also realized he had been too blunt. He scratched his head anxiously, trying to smooth things over. But Wai Ru-tung remained calm and directly began explaining his job. Ha-rin frowned and stayed silent. If Wai Ru-tung had really been this laid back about it, how could things have escalated to that extent with a customer in the previous life? At this moment, another waiter walked over. He leaned close to Wai Ru-tung's ear and whispered a few words. Wai Ru-tung's expression changed instantly, and he immediately turned around and left. Song-yun felt a pang of guilt and tugged on Ha-rin, suggesting they introduce Wai Ru-tung to a job that paid well and was easy. But Ha-rin's gaze kept following Wai Ru-tung's back. The tension from just now hadn't faded, and he kept feeling something was going to happen. Before Song-yun got a response, he pouted and said aggrievedly, "Ha-rin, you don't even want to listen to me anymore. You really don't love me." Just then, a sudden commotion erupted in the crowd, mixed with the shrill sound of a glass bottle shattering. Before Song-yun could react, Ha-rin had already darted out like an arrow. Something really had happened. It was obviously just an offhand remark, yet it made it impossible for the boy to truly stay calm. In the previous episode, we said that Ha-rin ran over as soon as he heard the noise. All he saw was a drunken man, clutching a sharp bottle neck in his hand, pressing it against Wai Ru-tung's cheek and threatening, "If you don't fucking agree, I'll slash up that face of yours." Wai Ru-tung was so frightened that his face went deathly pale. His lips trembled, yet he couldn't squeeze out a single word. The man forcibly projected his obsession with his ex-boyfriend onto Wai Ru-tung. Wai Ru-tung wanted to avoid it, but there was no way to escape. At this moment, Ha-rin and Ju Swo had already squeezed into the crowd. Meanwhile, Song-yun was blocked outside. Ha-rin quickly swept a glance over the situation and exchanged a tacit understanding with Ju Swo. I'll go draw his attention away. You circle around behind him. If we don't pin him down, he'll... Ha-rin pushed through the crowd and stepped up in front of the man. He belongs to me now. If you want to take him away, you should at least ask me first. Wai Rutung's eyes suddenly widened as he stared over. He hadn't expected Ha-rin to be the first one to stand up and protect him. The man turned around, his attention completely drawn away by Ha-rin. A snot-nosed brat like you thinks you can keep a pretty boy? Cursing as he went, he raised the bottle to smash it. Believe it or not, I'll crack your skull open with this bottle. Ju Swo seized the timing and suddenly lunged forward. From behind, he clamped down hard on the man's arms. But the man suddenly snapped his wrists and flung the half-broken bottle straight out. The jagged mouth of the bottle flew past, just grazing Ha-rin's brow. Ha-rin only felt a numbness at his brow, and the next second, blood gushed out, staining half his face red. Song-yun finally pushed his way through layer after layer of the crowd. He grabbed Ha-rin by the shoulder and turned him, his voice low. Who did this to you? Ha-rin's eyes were so stuck together with blood he couldn't open them. Song-yun, can you freaking stop shaking me so hard? Hurry up and get me to a hospital. The moment the words left his mouth, he passed out. When he woke up again, he saw Ju Swo hanging his head, being scolded by Ha-riang. He saw Ju Swo hanging his head and being scolded by Ha-riang, and Ha-rin had originally wanted to plead for him. But Ha-riang ended up scolding Ha-rin along with him. You haven't even had your turn to play innocent yet. First day of school and you run off to a bar, even get into a fight. You've really got some nerve. Ha-rin now deeply understood what it meant to bring trouble on oneself. Had he known, he would have just kept pretending to sleep. At this moment, the door of the ward was pushed open a crack, revealing half of Song-yun's head. He looked at Ha-riang, his voice unbelievably soft. Liangji, can I come in and see Ha-rin? Ha-riang said nothing, his face tense, and turned around to walk out. Song-yun immediately rushed to Ha-rin's bedside. How are you feeling? Does the wound still hurt? Does it still hurt? Right now there was a kind of fragile beauty about Ha-rin. He didn't have much strength and replied in a low voice, of course it hurts. Song-yun's breath hitched, as if his heart had been lightly scratched. Bracing his hands on the edge of the bed, he bent down and carefully examined the bandage on Ha-rin's forehead. This cut is way too long. I was right there when the doctor was stitching it up, and just watching made me shake. Your face? It won't be scarred, will it? Ha-rin countered. So what if it leaves a scar? Song-yun only patted his own chest with a smile. Don't be afraid even if it does. No one's going to force me to marry you anyway. As soon as the words left his mouth, both of them were stunned. Song-yun was always like this, speaking without thinking. In his previous life, when Ha-rin had suffered a small injury on his face, Song-yun had said the exact same thing. If it leaves a scar, I'll marry you. Even his expression and tone had been identical. Ever since he was reborn, Ha-rin had been trying to shake off the shadows of his past life. But there were always certain moments that would, without warning, stir his dried-up heart. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Song-yun hurriedly changed the subject. Are you hungry? Do you want me to buy you something to eat? Ha-rin didn't make things difficult for him. Buy me a bowl of black rice porridge. Song-yun bolted out of the room the moment he felt like he'd been suddenly given the green light. Ha-rin slept for a while. In a daze, he heard people talking outside. He hadn't expected the visitor to be Wai Rutung, but thinking about it carefully, it was only natural. In this life, Ha-rin had been injured while trying to save Wai Rutung. Coming to the hospital to visit was, after all, the decent thing to do. Mustering up his courage, Wai Rutung spoke. I really want to thank you. If it hadn't been for you and Ju Swo stepping in, I'm afraid I would have. Ha-rin cut him off directly. Don't ever go back to that place again. Even if you're good at handling those customers, there will always be emergencies. When that happens, you won't be able to bear it alone. If it happens again, I can't guarantee I'll be able to save you in time. Wai Rutung's eyes instantly reddened. I thought you would look down on me. It was like he'd been holding it in for too long, and the words just poured out. Ha-rin, I think you must have already noticed. I like boys. The fact that you could find that bar so quickly means you're most likely part of the community too. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden smack from outside the door. Song-yun was standing at the doorway, completely stunned. The bag of instant food in his hand slipped straight to the floor. Ha-rin's head hurt even more. How did things end up going in such a strange direction? In the previous life, it was only a month after meeting Wai Rutung that Song-yun slowly realized he liked boys. But now, He'd learned ahead of time that both of his friends were gay. The impact was practically doubled. Why Rutung was dumbfounded on the spot. Could it be that Song Yun didn't know Ha-rin was gay too? Had he just ruined everything? His voice trembled as he tried to speak and explain, but Ha-rin still looked completely calm. He raised his hand to cut him off. You should head back first. Don't you still have class at school today? Seeing that he wasn't angry, Wai Rutung finally breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced back at Song Yun once more, ultimately said nothing, then turned and left in quick steps. Song Yun slowly walked into the room and sat down by Ha-rin's bed. Just now, every word he said had been true. Ha-rin lowered his eyes and kept silent, and Song Yun grew anxious at once. Say something. Ha-rin looked up and fixed his gaze on him. If it's true, are you happy? Song Yun's expression froze instantly, as if he couldn't understand. Ha-rin went on. Didn't you say Wai Rutung is very good-looking, and that if he were a girl, you would go after him? He forced out a smile that was almost bloodless. Now you know he likes boys. Doesn't that give you an even better chance? Song Yun stared for a few seconds, then suddenly stood up and shouted at him. Was I asking him? I was fucking asking you. Ha-rin's memory seemed to pause for a moment. The next second, he spoke, enunciating each word. Yes, I am. Song Yun's face suddenly grew complicated, like he was holding back anger and also like he'd been stabbed. But in the end, he didn't say anything, just turned around and left. Ha-rin stared blankly at the closed door, completely unable to figure it out. What on earth was he angry about? The lover from his past life had become his romantic rival. The white moonlight in his childhood friend's heart had actually fallen for him. When they went back to school, the air between the few of them had changed. It was so strange it felt suffocating. Every time Wai Rutung came to look for Ha-rin, Song Yun would act like he'd been ignited, unreasonably irritable. Yet he stubbornly didn't say a single word. Wai Rutung felt so stifled inside it hurt, and he was terribly aggrieved. He quietly asked Ha-rin, is Song Yun homophobic? Why does he pull that face every time he sees me? Ha-rin was also very confused. In their past life, it was clearly Song Yun who bent himself, so there's no reason for him to suddenly do a 180 in this life and turn into a homophobe. He quietly turned his eyes to the side and snuck a glance. Ever since that incident at the bar, Wai Rutung's attitude toward him had suddenly become especially attentive. So attentive that it was hard not to misunderstand. Was he trying to pursue him? Then is Song Yun so upset because he thinks I stole the person he likes? Ha-rin's scalp tingled just thinking about it. A former lover suddenly turning into a love rival. This was way too melodramatic. In order to keep things from spiraling further out of control, Ha-rin immediately decided on the spot. He had to cut this off quickly and cleanly. Any feelings that shouldn't appear had to be strangled in the cradle before they even began. After evening self-study, the two of them arranged to meet in the ping-pong room that almost no one ever used. Ha-rin got straight to the point and said, I think you may have misunderstood me. The moment Wai Rutung heard that, his heart immediately sank, and his face gradually went pale. But Ha-rin didn't give him any room to buffer. I do like men, but I don't like your type. So, Wai Rutung anxiously pressed him. Not even being friends is possible? Ha-rin looked at him coldly. What kind of friends do you think we can be? Study buddies? Bandmates? Or co-workers earning money together? Wai Rutung's face turned even paler, and his whole body began to tremble uncontrollably. Sorry, I didn't understand the situation and caused you trouble. I won't come to bother you again. With that, he ran off in a panic. Ha-rin knew that what he had just said was indeed a bit too much. Ha-rin knew he had gone too far with his words. But even if he was seen as a harsh and arrogant person, he no longer cared. Only after Wai Rutung's figure completely disappeared did Ha-rin slightly turn his head and say coldly, come out. He had long known that Ju Swo must be hiding nearby. He just hadn't expected. Song Yun was there too. It seemed that Song Yun still couldn't let go of Wai Rutung. Song Yun couldn't understand it. Ha-rin clearly wasn't that kind of person, so why did he have to say something so hurtful? Ha-rin let out a cold laugh and asked in return, and what makes you think you know me? Every word he spoke was barbed. Even words like, let's cut ties were always on the tip of his tongue. To Song Yun, the Ha-rin before his eyes felt covered in thorns, so unfamiliar that it made his eyes ache. Ha-rin didn't continue to provoke him. He simply sent Song Yun a text message. This is a job I asked my brother to find for Wai Rutung. Forward this text to him and say you were the one who asked someone to find it for him. With that, he turned around and left. Song Yun couldn't help calling out to him. Why are you doing this? You rejected Wai Rutung, yet you secretly helped him find a job. Isn't that contradictory? Having been reborn for another lifetime, Song Yun finally saw clearly. This is what it means to long for something and never obtain it. Ha-rin had made it very clear, Helping Wai Rutung was because Wai Rutung had a pitiful background. Rejecting Wai Rutung was because it was impossible for him to like Wai Rutung. These two things did not conflict. Yet a dull, aching sadness suddenly surged up in Song Yun's heart. Ha-rin, will the distance between us only grow farther and farther? After that night, the relationship between Song Yun and Wai Rutung slowly improved, while Ha-rin, finally free from anyone's disturbance, poured all his energy into studying. He also leaped from 23rd place in the grade to 5th place in the class in the monthly exam. That night, Ha-rin curled up at home, buried in doing practice problems, his whole being sunk into a sea of questions, when he suddenly received a call from Song Yun. Ha-rin, do you still remember what day it is today? As soon as Ha-rin heard his voice, he knew Song Yun was drunk. Song Yun's tongue was all twisted as he repeated again, I'm asking you, do you still remember what day it is today? Of course, Ha-rin remembered. On this day in his previous life, he had carefully prepared a birthday gift for Song Yun, but had never been able to give it to him. Ha-rin gripped the pen more tightly, but his tone was as flat as if he had no emotion. I don't remember. What do you want from me? On the other end of the line, Song Yun roared, it's my damn birthday today. Ha-rin, you can even forget my damn birthday? Are you dead set on cutting ties with me, or what? Ha-rin was silent for a few seconds, his voice still faint. Where's Wai Rutung? Haven't you been really close to him lately? Let him keep you company. Song Yun cut him off roughly. Don't bring up anyone else to me. Do you still see me as your brother or not? I'll wait for you at the usual place. If you're still not here after midnight, I'll never talk to you again. Ha-rin wasn't afraid of Song Yun threatening him with cutting ties. This was exactly the outcome Ha-rin wanted. It was just that Song Yun was clearly very drunk, and the usual place happened to be the rooftop of an abandoned, unfinished building. But in the end, Ha-rin still went to the usual place. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw that Song Yun was so drunk he could barely stay conscious. While Ha-rin was sizing Song Yun up, Song Yun lifted his head and stared at him. Ha-rin, you came. Song Yun wobbled as he tried to stand up, but his body wouldn't obey, and the next second he plopped back down on his butt. Ha-rin looked at him without speaking. On this day in the previous life, Song Yun had already officially confessed to Wai Rutung. Yet in this life, Song Yun had instead run off alone to the unfinished building to drink in gloom, without even mentioning the 3 words, Wai Rutung. Ha-rin's heart suddenly sank, his emotions in chaos. Could it be that his own intrusion had changed the original course between Song Yun and Wai Rutung? Song Yun, feeling wronged, tugged at the hem of Ha-rin's clothes. Ha-rin, say something. Ha-rin sat down beside him, picked up a beer and made a light toast to him. Song Yun, happy 18th birthday. Song Yun was stunned for a moment. A smile slowly crept up into his brows and eyes. He suddenly bent down, forcibly closing the distance between them. His warm breath brushed across the other's face. Ha-rin's face flushed scarlet in an instant. What are you trying to do? But Song Yun simply handed a can of beer to his hand. If you want to spend my birthday with me, then finish this can of beer in one go. The boy in the previous life had been hurt too deeply and no longer dared to love. In this life, he had finally decided to leave, only to be clung to relentlessly. In the last episode, we said that Song Yun shoved a can of beer directly in front of Ha-rin. Ha-rin only felt that this person was becoming more and more excessive. Show him a little kindness and he immediately pushed his luck. But for the sake of his birthday, Ha-rin still took it, tilted his head back, and gulped it down in big swallows. Song Yun's emotions were fired up as well, and he shouted hoarsely in support, That's what a brother does. I'll drink with you. With that, he cracked open a can himself and started drinking. Ha-rin suddenly felt a bit dizzy. In his previous life, after all that struggling and hustling, a single can of beer was nothing. But in this life, he had almost no experience with alcohol, and sure enough, it went to his head all at once. He hurriedly pressed down on Song Yun's hand to stop him from drinking anymore. If they kept going like this, he himself wouldn't be able to hold out, let alone get Song Yun home safely. But Song Yun didn't listen at all. He flipped his hand and clamped down on Ha-rin's wrist. Ha-rin, do you know something? These days I've been so damn suffocated I could die. You said you wanted to listen carefully in class and study quietly, so I'd rather zone out and sleep than dare casually come over to talk to you. You said you don't like Yu Luofeng, so I never brought him up again. Not a single word. He suddenly flung the beer can to the side. I've already done this much. What more do you want from me? As Song Yun spoke, his voice actually started to choke despite himself. Today is my 18th birthday, and you just forget it. Have you ever really treated me as a brother or not? Ha-rin felt the corners of his eyes sting. Song Yun kept calling him brother, but what Ha-rin feared most was being treated as nothing more than a brother by him. In his previous life, Ha-rin had desperately guarded the secret of his crush on Song-yun, while still forcing a smile as he helped his good brother search for true love. Until later, when Wai Rutung left, Ha-rin then carefully moved closer, slipped into the empty space beside him, and slowly drew Song-yun's gaze onto himself. Ha-rin always remembered that night, when he took advantage of Song-yun being drunk and had their first sexual encounter. Song-yun didn't say anything, but that face of his was written all over with a cold contempt that almost tore Ha-rin apart on the spot. It was Ha-rin who was too naive. From beginning to end, Song-yun only ever treated Ha-rin as a stand-in for Wai Rutung. No matter how sincere or how desperate Ha-rin was toward Song-yun, the moment Wai Rutung came back, Ha-rin was immediately knocked back into his original place. Song-yun's heart had never been with Ha-rin. Since that was the case, what was there to say about forever and ever? It was nothing but Ha-rin lying to himself. But right pan at that moment, Song-yun climbed back up to that original height again. 1 second he was still standing on the stone pier, facing the wind and singing. The next second he was squatting at the foot of Mount Zhong, clutching the hem of his pants and refusing to let go, staring at that pant leg and saying aggrievedly, "Ha-rin, don't ignore me." Ha-rin felt that if he kept letting himself be tormented like this by him, it would really never end. So he called Ju Swo over. The two of them hoisted Song-yun up together and carried him out. Song-yun mumbled something indistinctly, and Ha-rin didn't catch it, nor did he want to. Getting no response, Song-yun suddenly reached out and twisted Ha-rin's head toward him. Then there was a loud smooch on his face as he planted a heavy kiss. Ha-rin froze on the spot. Logically speaking, in this lifetime Song-yun shouldn't have bent this fast. How did he just kiss him without saying a single word? Taking advantage of the moment, Song-yun pinned him against the nearby concrete wall. He cupped that face in his hands and kissed him all over in a completely unrestrained, chaotic way. This was so over the top that Ju Swo was stunned on the spot. Ha-rin pushed Song-yun away with all his might, so furious he could have cursed out all his ancestors. He whipped his head around and roared, "Ju Swo, do you really think you're just decoration? Enjoying the show? Don't you know to pull him off me?" Ha-rin wiped his face hard and frantically with his sleeve, only then realizing that his lips had been banged open by that guy. But Song-yun only stood there with his hands on his hips, grinning in smug, brazen triumph. "How about that? I, Master Xia, can kiss men too." "How about it, Ha-rin? I can kiss men too. What's so great about liking men? Ha! What's so great about liking men? Ha ha ha! I can do it too." A violent urge flared up in Ha-rin. He wanted to smash Song-yun to the ground and stomp on him a couple of times. "I can kiss men too." When Song-yun sobered up from his hangover and remembered last night, he completely lost his composure. In the previous episode, it was said that Song-yun took advantage of the alcohol and stole a kiss from Ha-rin. He was completely floating on the spot, proudly showing off everywhere. Ha-rin couldn't help but yell at him. "What the hell? You think this is playing house? If you've got the guts, then take off your pants and let me do you." Ju Swo was scared silly on the spot. Ever since he was a kid, he had never seen such a ruthless side of Ha-rin. Song-yun still wasn't afraid of death and stuck to him again. Ha-rin was not polite either and kicked him to the ground. "I really must have water in my brain to come here and let you mess around with me." Ju Swo looked at Song-yun, who was lying on the ground drunk and acting crazy. He silently lit a candle for him. "Young Master Song, this is the only thing I can do for you." Ha-rin couldn't be bothered anymore and told Ju Swo to take Song-yun back. He himself turned around and went home to study. The next day, Ju Swo received a call from Song-yun. He glanced around, quietly found a secluded corner, and pressed the answer button. Song-yun's voice rushed over immediately. "Why has Ha-rin's phone been unreachable this whole time? Is his phone broken?" Ju Swo moved the phone a bit farther away and replied calmly, "He blocked you." Song-yun was stunned on the spot. "What right does he have to block me? How did I offend him?" Unhurriedly, Ju Swo began to explain what had happened, bit by bit. Before he had even finished, Song-yun was already so anxious he was about to explode. "No way, did I actually do something that embarrassing? Did Ha-rin laugh himself to death on the spot back then?" Ju Swo was still speaking unhurriedly as always. "Not really, he actually wanted me to help him carry you back home together. Who knew you would suddenly pin him against the wall? You even started randomly kissing his face, and even stuck your tongue in." Song-yun turned to stone on the spot, as if his whole being had been split in two. The other end of the line went deathly quiet. After quite a while, Ju Swo finally asked, "Young Master Song, are you still alive?" Song-yun replied in a breathless whisper, "Still alive." He suddenly snapped back to his senses and hurried to explain, "No, no," but Ju Swo cut him off directly. Explaining to me is useless. I'm not the one you pinned against the wall. Song Yun exploded, shouting hoarsely, "Who the hell wants to pin you? Who the hell wants to pin you? Hurry up and give the phone to Ha-rin." SWO had no choice but to walk over and knock on Ha-rin's bedroom door. "Second young master, Song Yun is on the phone. He says he wants you to answer." Ha-rin was currently being tortured by an insanely perverted geometry problem until his eyes were seeing stars. He was in no mood to answer the phone. "Tell him to get lost somewhere and stop bothering me." SWO passed the exact words along. Song Yun threatened coldly, "You tell him if he doesn't pick up, I'll just storm straight over to your house." As SWO was in the middle of relaying this, Ha-riang happened to be walking by. "Who has such guts? Daring to charge in and kill people at our house?" Song Yun and SWO instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Ha-riang didn't even need to guess to know it was Song Yun on the other end of the line and said mildly, "The college entrance exam is coming up soon. Don't wander around. Spend more time studying." As soon as he stepped into the team room, SWO immediately lowered his voice to the phone. "Second young master is probably still angry. How about you wait until you get to school to talk and explain it to him face to face?" Song Yun agreed, nodding hard like a pecking chick. Ma Sayo's heart slowly began to stir. How had he never noticed before that Ha-rin was this good-looking? That night he lay awake until dawn. How had he still not noticed that Ha-rin was this good-looking? The day after his sleepless night till dawn, Song Yun came to school with 2 heavy dark circles under his eyes. As soon as he walked into the classroom, he saw Ha-rin by the window. The spring morning light fell on his face, making him look even paler, even more delicate. Song Yun froze for a moment. How could Ha-rin be this good-looking? How had he never before put the word good-looking together with Ha-rin? Since childhood they had been inseparable. Going to school together, pulling pranks together, skipping class together, pulling pranks together. So close they were almost indistinguishable from each other. But when had Ha-rin started avoiding him? Was it after he came back from Australia, or even earlier back when, a few years ago, Ha-rin no longer wanted to bathe with him? Maybe distance is what makes people see things clearly again. The Ha-rin standing here now is no longer the way she is in his memory. Taller than before, thinner, and even more attractive. When their eyes met, an indescribable awkwardness suddenly filled the air. After a moment, Ha-rin went back to that expressionless face, lowered her head, and continued reading. Only then did Song Yun snap back to himself and take a deep breath. He strode over to Ha-rin's desk. "Ha-rin, we need to talk." SWO tactfully stood up from his seat. He walked over to another girl who had arrived early in the classroom. "Can you come outside with me for a moment?" Once they had left, Song Yun began to speak haltingly. "About what happened the night before last. SWO told me everything." "Actually," Ha-rin cut him off coldly, "I know you were drunk. I'm not going to bother with a drunk." Song Yun froze for a few seconds, his face full of confusion. "If you're not bothered, then why did you block me?" Ha-rin tilted her head and looked at him with the hard, cold gaze of a seashell. "The phone is mine. Whoever I want to block is my freedom. Do I need your permission?" Song Yun was struck dumb on the spot. This kind of simple and brutal way of cutting ties from Ha-rin almost shattered his entire understanding of things. The two of them were locked in a stalemate for quite a while before Song Yun lowered his head first. "Ha-rin, can we please talk properly? You have to at least give me a reason." Ha-rin didn't even lift her head. "Because I like men and you don't." Song Yun grew anxious. "What's wrong with liking men? I don't even mind." But Ha-rin cuts him off again. "People are drawn to those like themselves. We're not the same kind of people, and we're not on the same path." Song Yun is about to explode with anger. "Ha-rin, if you insist on drawing the line like this, then starting today I like men too. Are you satisfied now?" Ha-rin tugs helplessly at the corner of his mouth but can't smile. "Do you think this is a joke? Do you really understand this group of people? Have you walked this path? Do you know how hard it is? Can you imagine, once your family finds out about your orientation, how much hurt they'll have to bear?" He takes a deep breath, his voice even heavier. "They're all people who've been pushed to the point where there's no road left. Even if they want to blend into society, no one allows it, no one accepts it. Song Yun, cherish who you are now. Don't push yourself step by step into a dead end, or one day, you'll regret it." Only then does Song Yunling Ly realize that at some point, a deep chasm has already opened up between him and Ha-rin. He really doesn't understand that group. But with Ha-rin dismissing everything like this, there's still a stubborn sense of defiance caught in his chest. He is just about to argue a few more words when footsteps sound outside the door, coming from far to near. The girl who had been called away by SWO comes back with a dark expression. "Is he crazy? Calling me out and then not saying a single word? Was he just messing with me?" SWO was aggrieved to death. He had only asked her to go out for a moment, He never said she had to talk to her, so how could she be that furious? The timing had already been missed, so the two of them could only stop for now. In the blink of an eye, it was the activities class a few days later, and Song-yun was shrinking into his seat, staring at his phone with an unervingly focused gaze. Song-yun was so startled that he sprang up from his seat, then guiltily hid the phone behind his back. When he saw clearly that it was Wai Rutung, he patted his chest in lingering fear. I thought the teacher came. Wai Rutung instantly turned into a little devil, curling his lips meaningfully. Are you looking at something you shouldn't be seeing? The boy had just witnessed with his own eyes his childhood friend and his white moonlight kissing, and he instinctively turned around and ran. Fate really has a way of making fun of people. Previously on, we mentioned Wai Rutung bumping into Song-yun hiding in the classroom. Song-yun awkwardly scratched the back of his head, and to be honest, he was reading a novel. The key was, the way the book described the looks of the peerless Yuk kept making Song-yun think of Wai Rutung. The tips of Wai Rutung's ears grew hot. He'd heard plenty of people praise his looks. Words like that were nothing new, but Song-yun just had to say, all serious, that he looked like a peerless Yuk from a BL novel. Wai Rutung really couldn't tell whether Song-yun was flirting with him on purpose, or if he was just a natural-born flirt. He thought of Ha-rin again, aloof, sharp-tongued. If only Ha-rin's mouth could be half as sweet as Song-yun's. Forget it, I don't want to think about him. Just then, as if something had come to mind, Song-yun suddenly stood up. Wai Rutung, can I ask you for a favor? Song-yun said that people online claimed, if you don't reject physical contact with the same sex, you might have the potential to be bent. He wanted to give it a try, but even though he had once cornered Ha-rin against the wall and even French kissed him, he just couldn't remember it clearly. Wai Rutung immediately became alert and took a step back. You're not thinking of trying it with me, are you? Song-yun clasped his hands behind his back and spoke very earnestly. It was just a test. He wouldn't do anything to Wai Rutung. Wai Rutung examined Song-yun from head to toe. Tall and strapping, with pretty good features too. If it was just a simple kiss, it wouldn't really be a loss. Wai Rutung nodded in agreement. Song-yun was obviously anxious. Taking advantage of the empty classroom, he wanted to try it right now. Wai Rutung was still uneasy and first swept his gaze around the room. Only after confirming there was truly no one else did he push Song-yun back down into his seat. He closed his eyes and leaned in to kiss him. At that moment, Ha-rin, who had just reached the classroom door, looked up, and in that instant, Ha-rin caught sight of the scene where Wai Rutung lowered his head slightly and kissed Song-yun. He felt as if someone had punched him hard in the chest. His whole body froze on the spot, unable to move at all. Behind him, before JUSWO could even react, Ha-rin had already grabbed him and spun around, dragging him away. I forgot something. Come back with me to get it. Ju-swo's face was full of question marks. Hadn't they just finished running laps and come back? Where were they going to get something from? Ha-rin didn't give him any time to think at all. He was simply flustered and anxious, even a bit discomposed, gripping Ju-swo's arm in a death hold and pulling him out. In the classroom, Wai Rutung's lips touched Song-yun's as he gently kissed him for a few seconds, then pulled back. Did you feel anything? Song-yun slowly opened his eyes. He frowned and thought about it seriously. For example, it was a bit warm. Wai Rutung pressed a hand to his chest again, confirming that his heartbeat hadn't sped up either. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Same here. I don't really feel anything for you. Yet Song-yun's heart still sank a little. The first time he met Wai Rutung, he had truly been stunned by that face, even absurdly wishing that Wai Rutung were a girl so he could go after him with everything he had. But later, as things kept happening one after another, Song-yun's feelings for Wai Rutung also gradually lost that initial flutter. Out on the track, JUSWO accompanied Ha-rin as they circled around the field again and again. He figured it out. Ha-rin wasn't looking for anything at all. He was just wandering aimlessly, until the sky gradually darkened. JUSWO finally couldn't help reminding him, should we go to the cafeteria to eat first? If we don't go now, there'll be nothing left to buy. Ha-rin stared at the sunset on the horizon that was about to disappear, his voice so low it sounded like he was talking to himself. As expected, things like fate, the white moonlight, in a fit of anger, publicly said that she was together with her childhood sweetheart. But precisely because of this sentence, the misunderstanding only deepened. In the last episode, it was said that the two of them walked all the way from the playground to the student cafeteria. Ha-rin sat by the dining table, waiting in utter boredom. Just then, he saw Wai Rutung walking down the aisle with a tray, and Ha-rin spoke up to stop him. Wai Rutung, can you sit for a while? I have something I want to ask you. His tone was quite gentle, which instead left Wai Rutung a little at a loss. Wai Rutung nodded, set down his tray, and sat diagonally across from Ha-rin. "What is it? Go ahead." Ha-rin paused for a few seconds before asking, "Are you together with Song-yun?" Why Rutung hadn't expected that this would be the first thing he asked. "Why do you ask that?" Ha-rin gave a somewhat bitter smile. "This afternoon, I saw you two in the classroom. I ran into it by accident, and I won't go around telling people." "Don't worry." Why Rutung's heart sank. "So you never cared about me in the first place?" He clenched his teeth and replied in a fit of pique, "Yes, I'm with him." The surroundings fell quiet all at once. So quiet it felt like this conversation was supposed to end right here. Ha-rin suddenly spoke up. "Since you're together now, treat him a little better. Song-yun is a very straightforward person. He might not think some things through, so be more tolerant of him." Why Rutung had only meant to jab at him a little, but hadn't expected these words in return, and he was so angry that tears almost welled up. He turned his face slightly to the side, desperately reminding himself to hold it together and absolutely not shed tears at this moment. That would only make Ha-rin look down on him even more. After a while, Wai Rutung turned back, lifting a brilliantly dazzling smile. "You don't need to worry about that. Since I've chosen Song-yun, I will definitely treat him even better." With that, he picked up his tray and quickly walked away. Ha-rin suddenly felt a chill in his heart. "Song-yun, you've finally gotten what you wanted." Evening self-study time arrived. After that night's self-study session ended, Ha-rin, for the first time ever, spoke up and invited Song-yun to walk together. Song-yun was stunned for half a second. The next second, he nodded frantically. Ha-rin sent Ju Swo away and walked with Song-yun alone, pushing the cart along the small path on campus. Song-yun didn't understand why Ha-rin had suddenly changed, even taking the initiative to chat with him. It made him a little nervous, yet filled with a kind of indescribable anticipation. Just as he was struggling over whether he should speak first to break the silence, Ha-rin slowly opened his mouth. "Song-yun, you've already decided to take this path, haven't you?" Song-yun looked completely confused. Which path? Wasn't it just this little path that Ha-rin had brought him along? Ha-rin tightened his grip on his hand, and as if resigning himself, continued to ask, "Are you sure you like men?" Song-yun didn't catch that at all. The topic had shifted way too fast. He had gone to Wai Rutung for a test, but he still didn't dare be 100% sure about his own orientation. But if he said, "I don't at this moment," Ha-rin would probably coolly cut him out of his world again. In order to stand on the same side as Ha-rin, even if he had to pretend that he liked men. Thinking of this, Song-yun nodded without hesitation. "I'm sure, I like men." Ha-rin stopped walking and turned back to look at him. His expression was very faint, very calm. "Song-yun, for the sake of our brotherhood of more than 10 years, I want to tell you a few things from my heart." One had his whole heart set on being with a boy, and the boy next door also had his whole heart set on being with a boy. Yet in the end, he was still ruthlessly cast aside. As mentioned in the last episode, as long as Ha-rin opened his mouth, Song-yun's heart would sink, with an inexplicable feeling that he was about to be lectured. Obviously, Ha-rin was still a few months younger than Song-yun. Calm down, listen to him finish first. Maybe there would be a surprise later. It was as if Ha-rin had been holding it in for a long time. His tone was very serious as he earnestly advised him at great length. He told Song-yun how much resistance he would face in the future if he walked this path. He also urged Song-yun to become stronger. Song-yun couldn't fully understand, but he could hear it. Ha-rin was thinking for Song-yun's sake. Standing under the light, Ha-rin's outline was lit cleanly and sharply, almost perfectly. The more Song-yun looked, the more absent-minded he became, and his heartbeat grew faster and faster. No matter how difficult the road ahead might be, as long as the person by his side was Ha-rin, Song-yun felt there was nothing to be afraid of. Thinking of this, Song-yun still couldn't hold back, and the words burst out directly. "Ha-rin, how about we just..." But Ha-rin suddenly cut him off, like slamming a door shut. "I just got a notice from the homeroom teacher this morning. The top 30 in the grade will be merged into an advanced class, so starting tomorrow we won't be in the same class anymore, and we'll probably have very few chances to run into each other." A chunk of Song-yun's heart suddenly went hollow. "Even if we're not in the same class, we can still be like before." Ha-rin shook his head. He still shook his head, his voice very soft, yet ruthless. "Song-yun, we're destined not to be like we were before. Tonight is my last piece of advice to you. From now on we go our separate ways and take care of ourselves." Song-yun wanted to open his mouth and call out to Ha-rin, but his throat was dry, and no sound would come out no matter what. He stood alone under the dim yellow street lamp, standing there for a very, very long time. Suddenly, as if venting his anger, he grabbed his most beloved mountain bike and smashed it hard onto the ground. "You're the one who said people flock to their own kind, and you're also the one who said we should go our separate ways." Song Yun collapsed to the ground. So miserable it was, as if his sorrow was about to overflow from the screen. "What the fuck do you actually want me to do?" The next day, Ha-rin didn't say a final goodbye to Song Yun and just went straight to the advanced class. Because they were in another teaching building, the two of them basically had no chance to run into each other. Even if they bumped into each other on the playground, they would pretend not to know each other. A few days later, on the way home after evening self-study, JSWO suddenly spoke. "Lately, Song Yun hasn't come to talk to me at all." Ha-rin glanced sideways at him. "Didn't you used to find Song Yun pretty annoying?" JSWO admitted outright. "Yeah, he did get on my nerves a bit. Before, whenever he came to me, it was either to order me around or to pry about you, second young master. But now he doesn't boss me around anymore, and he doesn't ask about you either. I don't even know why. It just makes me feel a bit down." Ha-rin stifled a laugh and raised a hand to tap him on the forehead. "Do you have to be this desperate for it?" JSWO grew more anxious. Back when the three of them used to hang out together, they were obviously very happy. He couldn't figure out why just talking about getting into a top university meant they had to cut off Song Yun. But Ha-rin suddenly cut him off. "My business is none of yours." He was silent for a while, but still couldn't hold back. "Tell me, how has Song Yun been lately?" JSWO thought for a moment. "He seems even more quiet and withdrawn than before. The whole way he looks, it's like he's holding down a fierce, ruthless edge." Ha-rin, however, couldn't match the scene in his mind. That kind of fool like Song Yun, if he ever really went hard, what would he even be like? He hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Then what about him and Wai Rutung?" In the previous lifetime, they had once loved each other with everything they had. In this lifetime, they had finally drawn a clear line. In the last episode, it was mentioned that Ha-rin asked about Song Yun and Wai Rutung, and JSWO told him. In the class, only two Ruji could exchange a few words with Song Yun. The two of them were always huddled over their phones together, all secretive, like they were trading some kind of secret. Ha-rin was stunned for a moment. They were already face to face, so why were they still staring at their phones, teaming up to play games? But in the next second, a more serious question suddenly occurred to him. How has Song Yun been doing in class lately? Has he completely given up on himself? JSWO thought for a moment. Ever since you switched classes, he's been more focused in class than before. I've even seen him go to the teacher on his own to ask questions. Ha-rin froze with only one thought left in his mind. This is way too abnormal. In the previous lifetime, Song Yun had only just barely gotten into a third-tier university. If in this lifetime Song Yun could show a bit more drive, with that smart brain of his, maybe he really could aim for a better university. Ha-rin came back to his senses and suddenly felt that he was just worrying about nothing. He and Song Yun had already drifted apart. What university Song Yun got into had nothing to do with him. During the period that followed, Ha-rin still buried himself in his studies every day. Very soon, he climbed to the upper middle rank of the key class. At the same time, he also intermittently heard some news about Song Yun from JSWO. Song Yun had gotten his miracle back again. He made it into the top 5 of the class. With his current ranking, getting into the key class was only a matter of time. But if Song Yun really came, would Ha-rin's heart still be able to stay calm? Yet JSWO Pen said, Song Yun refused to enter the key class. When Ha-rin heard this, he was silent for a long time. Song Yun not coming to the key class. Was it because he didn't want to be in the same class as Ha-rin? Or because he couldn't bear to leave Yu Luoxiang alone in the regular class? Or perhaps both things were true. They were just drawing the line between them even more clearly. In the blink of an eye, it was Ha-rin's birthday. A few people gave him a simple celebration. After it was over, Ha-rin took a shower. Just as he was about to continue studying, his phone was bombarded by calls from an unfamiliar number. Ha-rin had no choice but to pick up. "Who is this?" On the other end of the line, it was very quiet, with only suppressed breathing. Ha-rin asked again, "May I ask who you are?" Just as he was about to hang up at that very second, he heard the other person say softly, "Happy birthday." That voice was so familiar it was impossible to avoid. Ha-rin's chest suddenly tightened, as if something had clogged it. Before he had time to react, the other person had already hung up, clean and decisively. Ha-rin held his phone, standing there in a daze for quite a while. Ha-rin held his phone and stayed frozen for a long time before he remembered. Song Yun's number was still on his blacklist, so whether it was calls or texts, none of them could get through. When Song Yun was 18, Ha-rin had kept him company and shared a can of beer with him. But when it was Ha-rin's turn to turn 18, All Song Yun could do was use an anonymous call to send a single birthday wish. Ha-rin let out a quiet sigh, rested his forehead against the edge of the desk, and slowly closed his eyes. Calculating it this way, he and Song Yun really had come to an end, hadn't they? On the other side, Song Yun silently hung up the phone. Ha-rin, happy birthday. I really wish I could stand by your side and say this to you in person. Under the lights, the boy next door sang with deep feeling. But this time, the boy did not look back at him even once. In the previous episode, we mentioned the month of June that year. That was when Ha-rin finally let out a sigh of relief, having finished the second college entrance examination of his life. The class was going to hold a graduation party, and at first, Ha-rin didn't want to go. He was afraid of running into Song Yun and ending up so embarrassed he could hardly breathe. But maybe Song Yun had stopped caring a long time ago, so why should he keep trapping himself? The party was held at a luxury hotel in the area. Yes, it was the one the class committee members had picked over and over again, selected with the utmost care until it could not be more meticulous. But in fact, this hotel was one of the properties owned under the Song family's name. They eat, dress, and use things at school in a way that on the surface is no different from the other students. But in reality, they come from prestigious families with large family businesses and truly wealthy backgrounds. That split second when Ha-rin's gaze drifted, he turned his head and happened to meet Song Yun's eyes. Their eyes locked, and both of them paused slightly. The next second, Ha-rin was the first to look away. Wai Rutung leaned close to Song Yun's ear and said something in a low voice, and after he finished speaking, he left. Song Yun hesitated for a moment. He lifted his foot, wanting to walk over toward Ha-rin. But before he had taken more than 2 steps, he was surrounded by several girls. He was almost squeezed into a humanoid meat bun. Fortunately, someone called him to go on stage and pick a song at that moment. Song Yun couldn't wait to seize this opportunity and immediately shook off those girls. He bounded onto the stage in 2 or 3 steps, paused, and said in a low voice, "Then I'll sing a song, Scalding Heart." Song Yun's voice was deep and magnetic, and the way he seriously sang a love song could practically make people go weak just listening. Ha-rin remembered very clearly that in his previous life, the first time he vaguely realized he liked Song Yun was right here when he was listening to Song Yun sing. At that time, Ha-rin was just a middle school student. Unfortunately, in that past life, Song Yun sang countless love songs for Wai Rutung, but not a single one was sung for Ha-rin. As Ha-rin listened to Song Yun's singing, he subconsciously went to see Wai Rutung's reaction. Wai Rutung looked surprised, followed with a great singing, then lowered his head and went back to skewering fruit. In Wai Rutung's eyes, the fruit seemed to be more attractive. Ha-rin was momentarily speechless. In this life, when Song Yun sings, it's like casting pearls before swine. Song Yun's gaze swept over vaguely in this direction. Could it be that he wanted to look at Wai Rutung, but had his line of sight blocked by her? Ha-rin suddenly felt guilty, as if she had forcibly stopped 2 people from meeting, so she hurriedly tugged JSWO away. Song Yun watched their backs as they left. Holding the microphone in his hand, his voice gradually came to a stop. Ha-rin and JSWO had just finished what they wanted to say, when Song Yun walked straight toward Ha-rin. "Ha-rin, I want to talk to you." This was the first time since the shift changed that they stood side by side and talked. Clearly, only a few months had passed, yet it felt as long as several years. JSWO was very tactful and immediately said he would head out first. The corridor quieted down again. Still, it was Song Yun who spoke first. "Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" Ha-rin looked at him in puzzlement. "Weren't you the one who said you had something to talk about?" Song Yun was almost choked by this line. "If I hadn't come to you, would you have just never come to me, only looking at me with that doctor looking at a patient gaze?" Song Yun let out a frustrated sigh. "The song I just sang, did it sound good?" But just now, Ha-rin had been too busy staring at the interaction between Song Yun and Yutong to hear clearly what he was singing. Song Yun's eyes instantly turned red. "Was I singing really that badly? So badly that it drove you out of the private room?" Ha-rin explained, a bit speechless. "No, I just came out to get some air." With his head lowered, Song Yun mumbled a few words under his breath. "And here I even." Ha-rin didn't think much of it and only asked, "Song Yun, what exactly do you want to say to me?" Song Yun fumbled in his pocket for quite a while. He stretched out his hand toward Ha-rin. "Hold out your hand. I've got something for you." The 2 of them once again parted on bad terms. If this is our ending, that's fine too. In the last episode, we left off with Song Yun loosening his hand and setting down a badge. "Here, this is for you." Ha-rin took it and looked down. It was that band's hardcore fan gold badge, limited to 300 pieces worldwide. He remembered that in the previous life, Song Yun had gone through a lot of trouble to get one, only to give it to Wai Rutung, So how did it end up in his own hands in this life? Song Yun was still going on and on. I really went through a lot of trouble to get this thing. I originally wanted to give it to you on your birthday, but you blocked me. I couldn't get through no matter how many times I called. Ha-rin suddenly remembered his birthday, that anonymous call which hung up right after dropping just 4 words. A sour pain rose in his chest, so strong it almost burned. Seeing that he wasn't speaking, Song Yun subconsciously waved his hand. He waved his hand while losing confidence again. I know, you don't actually like me that much. If you don't care, you can throw it away. Ha-rin still couldn't hold back and asked, why Rutung likes it too? Why don't you give it to him? Without even thinking, Song Yun said, I gave to him a long time ago. The slight ripple that had just risen in Ha-rin's heart instantly went still. How can I still be expecting anything from Song Yun? It's really too aggrieving, too pathetic, and too ridiculous. He stuffed the badge back into Song Yun's hand, his expression as calm as if nothing had happened. I really don't like it that much. You'd better take this thing back. Whether you keep it for yourself or sell it off, anything's better than giving it to me. Song Yun lowered his head and looked at the badge that had been stuffed back to him. Then he raised his eyes and looked at Ha-rin, his chest heaving violently, his face dark and frightening. But in the end, he didn't say anything. He just turned his head and walked away. Watching his back, Ha-rin thought quietly, Song Yun, if this is the ending for the two of us, that's fine too. Since that unhappy falling out, the two of them hadn't seen each other once for the entire summer vacation. On the day the college entrance exam results came out, Ha-rin received the admission letter from the prestigious medical school just as she had hoped. Meanwhile, under her father's forceful arrangements, Song Yun ended up going to the prestigious business school. In the blink of an eye, 4 years passed, and Ha-rin successfully completed all of her basic clinical courses. She also started an internship at the Central City Hospital. Her supervising mentor was named Kyo-mei, a neurosurgeon refined and handsome with a gentle temperament. He had always taken good care of Ha-rin. Kyo-mei suddenly leaned in and lowered his voice. It's rare for you to get off work on time today. How about I treat you to a meal? But Ha-rin raised her hand and waved it, directly turning him down. Kyo-mei looked a bit helpless. I've asked you out 5 times now, and you haven't said yes even once. Ha-rin gave an awkward smile. Once my internship ends in a few days, I'll treat you to a meal. Okay? Kyo-mei didn't push him any further. He extended his index finger and lightly tapped the tip of Ha-rin's nose, sealing the promise just like that. After 4 years apart, when they met again, Ha-rin still recognized him at a single glance. That day, Kyo-mei walked Ha-rin back to the dormitory building. Just before leaving, Kyo-mei suddenly reached out and pulled Ha-rin back. Don't rush off just yet. Ha-rin's heart tightened, and he hurriedly took a step back. Dr. Kyo, is there something else? Kyo-mei leaned in close to Ha-rin's ear, her voice soft and teasing. Do you want to consider me instead? Ha-rin was stunned for a few seconds. He suddenly felt a little like laughing. Ms. Kuo, actually I'm a 0, a pure 1. Kyo-mei gave him a puzzled look. I can tell. So what? Ha-rin thought, you're making eyes at me and telling me to consider it. You're staring at me all dazed and telling me to consider it. You're looking at me all dizzy and telling me to consider it. Are you trying to force me to top you? Finally coming back to herself, Kyo-mei suddenly grew a little flustered and angry. Where do I look like a 0? Ha-rin suddenly leaned in as well, lowering his voice. The way you were just now, you were born seductive to the bone. You'd be a perfect 0. But as a 1, you'd just be. Kyo-mei was completely choked by that one line. She had thought Ha-rin was a newbie, but she hadn't expected that once he started flirting, he'd be more like an old hand than she was. Kyo-mei simply dropped the act. If we can't be friends with benefits, we can at least be friends, right? I'm really interested in you. Ha-rin tilted his head and asked, what's the reason? Kyo-mei looked utterly sincere. All my colleagues and friends around me are straight men. I don't even have a single person I can really talk to from the heart. It's rare to meet someone like you. I truly want to be your friend. Ha-rin didn't know how much of this truly from Kyo-mei was real, but his intuition told him that Kyo-mei probably didn't mean him any harm. And just like that, the two of them became friends. Under the dim streetlight stood a person. From afar, you could only see the outline, not the features of their face. After confirming the other person's identity, Ha-rin's steps gradually slowed down. So many years had passed. He thought everything about Song Yun had long since faded from his memory. Yet, when that person appeared before his eyes again, he still recognized him at a glance. Over the 4 years, the impatience and innocence of Song Yun's high school days had slowly faded. He looked more like he had in the previous lifetime, and his gaze was cleaner, clearer. Seeing him stand there in silent stillness, Song Yun couldn't help walking 2 steps forward. Ha-rin took almost no time at all to steady his emotions, his tone polite yet distant. Why did you suddenly come over here? Song Yun opened his mouth, as if wanting to explain. But when the words reached his lips, he changed what he was going to say. Our company recently has a development project in the city, and since you're Inda, it happened to be on the way, so I came by to see you. Ha Rin's heart sank. Did you come to see me? Or to look for you, Luoxiang? Maybe after having the door slammed in your face, with nowhere to go so late at night, you only then thought of me, your former childhood friend. He didn't want to twist the knife in Song Yun's wound again. He only asked lightly, it's so late. Have you booked a hotel? Song Yun paused. Not yet. I'm not very familiar with the area around Da. Ha Rin glanced at the time. It was already past 10 in the evening, so he took him to look for a place to stay. Song Yun also noticed that Ha Rin was deliberately keeping his distance, so he walked right by his side, taking a few steps then looking back, wanting to speak but stopping himself. Seeing how miserable he looked holding it in, Ha Rin said, if you want to say something, just say it. Song Yun hesitated for a long time before finally asking, that person who just brought you back, is he your boyfriend? The person he liked already had a boyfriend. As her childhood friend, he finally couldn't hold back anymore. Song Yun still couldn't keep it in and asked again, the one who brought him back, was that his boyfriend? Ha Rin hadn't expected him to ask so bluntly. He was silent for a while before he said, you could say that. In fact, it would have been more accurate to drop the word boy. But he couldn't be bothered to correct it. Even Song Yun's breathing felt stuck. His steps slowed down as well. A bit impatient, Ha Rin urged him, walk faster. With difficulty, Song Yun lifted his head. How long have you two been together? The only reply he got was a cool, that's my personal business, isn't it? Song Yun didn't speak again. He just kept his spirits low and followed along in silence. The two of them entered the hotel together. Ha Rin moved quickly, getting a room for Song Yun and handing over the keycard. You're not in a good state. Turn in early tonight. But Song Yun didn't take it. He raised his eyes and asked, can you come up and sit with me for a bit? Ha Rin almost instinctively wanted to refuse, but then he saw that Song Yun's whole demeanor had collapsed. He could only nod and agree, but in his heart he was thinking, please, don't start pouring out your misery endlessly again. In the previous life, after Wai Rutung faked his death, no matter what Song Yun said, he would patiently listen to the end and would gently guide him, coax him, and comfort him. But in this life, his patience had long since been exhausted. He didn't want to step back onto that old path for even one more second. In the end, after the two of them sat down, neither of them spoke, and the air grew so tense with awkwardness it felt tight. Ha Rin secretly glanced at the time. Perfect, 5 minutes have passed. If he could hold on for another 6 or 7 minutes, he could find an excuse to leave. But right then, Song Yun spoke up. A few days ago, Wai Rutung gave me your Weibo account. Ha Rin was stunned for a moment. This topic was way too abrupt. Why was Song Yun bringing up his Weibo? He only heard Song Yun continue. I'm guessing he also gave you my Weibo alt account. He lifted his head, his gaze landing straight on Ha Rin. Those things I wrote on Weibo? Have you read them? Only then did Ha Rin react, realizing that this was the real point. Wasn't it just that pile of one-sided love on your Weibo? He was afraid that in the next second Song Yun would forcibly switch into complaint mode. So his voice immediately went cold. I don't really use Weibo. If you've got nothing else, I'm leaving. But Song Yun suddenly grabbed his hand, as if afraid he would walk away in the very next second. Ha Rin froze for a moment. Even his breathing stalled for half a beat. Song Yun took the chance to half kneel in front of him. As he rose, he directly pressed a kiss to his lips. Ha Rin's mind went blank for a few seconds. He snapped awake and suddenly pushed Song Yun away. Song Yun, I didn't hold it against you last time because you were drunk. What are you trying to do this time? He instinctively turned to leave. I'm not in the mood to play this kind of game with you. Song Yun immediately chased after him. He grabbed his hand and forcibly pinned him against the wall. I'm sorry, Ha Rin. I want to beg you for one thing. The boyhood friend's eyes were red, so aggrieved he could barely hold it in. As soon as he opened his mouth, it was to ask to be together. Ha Rin, be with me, okay? In the previous episode, it was said that Song Yun was holding on to Ha Rin, refusing to let go for a long time. Ha Rin glared at him and shouted angrily, let go of me, you call this begging? Pressing him down, Song Yun's voice trembled and lowered. Ha Rin, can you give me a chance? Ha Rin didn't understand, only focused on struggling. Just King, let go of me. Anxious, Song Yun poured out his words. I know you already have a boyfriend now, and doing this is really immoral, but I've already waited too long. I thought that as long as I became a little stronger, you would spare me one more glance. He hugged Ha Rin even tighter, so wronged he was almost about to cry. But we've been apart for too long. Now even meeting once feels so unfamiliar. I'm afraid that if I don't say it, I'll miss you for the rest of my life. Ha-rin's struggling slowly came to a stop as he forced himself to digest the information in those words bit by bit. Song-yun looked at him intently, his voice very steady. Ha-rin, try going out with me, will you? Maybe I'm not as experienced as your current boyfriend in some things, but I can learn. I'll do my very best to satisfy you. Give me a chance, okay? Ha-rin's tone was full of disbelief. You just said, you want to date me? Seeing that he was no longer struggling, a spark of hope suddenly rose in Song-yun's heart. He lowered his head, wanting to kiss Ha-rin again. But Ha-rin hurriedly turned his head to avoid him. The two of them were so close that they could clearly feel the searing heat of each other's skin. Ha-rin took a deep breath. Let's calm down first, then talk this through properly. Song-yun's grip on his hands relaxed just a little, and the next second, tightened even more. Song-yun buried his face in the crook of Ha-rin's neck, his voice muffled, sounding almost like he was acting spoiled. I'm afraid that the moment I let go, you'll leave right away. Ha-rin could feel Song-yun's burning breath, puffing again and again onto the most sensitive spot where his neck met his shoulder. Whether in the previous life or in this one, Song-yun could always easily stir up his desire. Ha-rin had to get out of here, calm down first, and then figure out how to deal with this series of sudden events. Ha-rin told Song-yun that the person who brought her back was not her boyfriend, but her trainee mentor. Song-yun realized it, his eyes suddenly lighting up, unable to suppress his smile. So, you're still single? A bit of distance finally opened up between the two of them. Ha-rin raised her eyes to look at him, her voice very soft yet very direct. You like me? Since when? Song-yun thought for a moment. Probably the second semester of senior year in high school. Ha-rin blurted out, No way. I saw with my own eyes that you and Wai Rutung were kissing in the classroom. Song-yun's expression froze, surprise mixed with embarrassment. Back then, I still wasn't sure if I was actually into guys. I was just curious for a moment. So I asked Luo Tong to help me test it out. Ha-rin frowned inwardly. That's not right. He'd clearly asked Wai Rutung about it at the time, and the other boy had plainly admitted it. All of a sudden, it was like something clicked for Song-yun, and his eyes lit up. No wonder after Luo Tong found out I liked you, he kept stammering as he apologized to me. So that's what he was talking about. Ha-rin only found it even more absurd. So what you mean is, Wai Rutung also knew that you liked me? Damn it, the word apologize alone had pushed him straight into a corner with no way out. But the whole thing also felt like some kind of illusion, making him more uneasy the more he thought about it. Song-yun laid everything out for him. It was only after you transferred classes that I realized I might have fallen for you. I was totally panicking and had no one to talk to, so I could only go to Luo Tong. Later at the graduation party, he even encouraged me to confess to you. I prepared a song I wanted to sing for you, but halfway through the performance, you walked out. I ran after you to hand you the gift, and you rejected it to my face. At this point, Song-yun couldn't help shooting him a resentful look. Ha-rin was left dazed, completely stunned by the sheer amount of information. The truth was actually the complete opposite of what he had always believed. Ha-rin again recalled that inner monologue he had seen earlier on Song-yun's Weibo. All the parts that had seemed wrong no matter how he looked at them at the time now seemed to make sense. Yet a deeper, uncontrollable unease slowly rose in his heart. Everything in front of him suddenly felt a little too perfect, to the point of seeming unreal, as if he were trapped in a false dream, and the moment he woke up, everything would disappear. Seeing Ha-rin frowning tightly and remaining silent, Song-yun softly called his name. Ha-rin snapped back to himself. A bit flustered, he pushed Song-yun away. I have to go back. The dorm is about to close. Song-yun quickly stepped after him and pressed down on the hand he was using to open the door. I know what I'm saying is very sudden, but I hope you'll think about it seriously. I can't stay here too long. Could you give me an answer within 3 days? Ha-rin didn't respond directly. He just nodded in a confused, disordered way. Song-yun lightly touched his shoulder. Ha-rin, could you take me off your block list? At least, give me some way to contact you. Right in front of him, Ha-rin removed him from the blacklist. For a moment, Song-yun felt satisfied, yet the sweetness burned with a sour ache. Only then did he let go of his hand and allow Ha-rin to leave. After returning to the dorm, Ha-rin took a shower, forcing himself to calm down completely. What Song-yun said, was it really true? He tossed and turned, thinking for a while, but in the end he opened Weibo and sent a private message to Wai Rutung. Have you and Song-yun ever actually been together? Before long, Wai Rutung replied. They had never been together. After reading the reply, Ha-rin's heart gradually settled down. He didn't even feel there was anything to regret about. At least for him, there was no regret. When he woke up the next day, Ha-rin still felt that everything was so unreal it was absurd. He took out his phone and carefully went to confirm it, but the moment he turned it on he froze. There were several text messages lying in his inbox. All of them were from Song-yeon. They had been sent intermittently from midnight all the way to after 8 in the morning. The more Ha-rin read, the more confused he became. So everything that happened last night was real. The coldness the boy had swallowed down in his previous life had finally been paid back with full force in this life. In the last episode, we mentioned that before Ha-rin could recover from the shock, the shrill ringing suddenly exploded. On the other end of the line was Song-yeon's voice. He stammered through a whole lot and finally asked carefully, "Can we meet today?" In his heart, Ha-rin had already decided to refuse, but before he had time to open his mouth, he heard Song-yeon say directly, "Ha-rin, I'm at the entrance of your dorm building right now, the same place I was standing yesterday. I'll wait for you to come." Ha-rin walked over to the window and leaned out to look down. Sure enough, Song-yeon was waiting downstairs, even standing in exactly the same spot as last night. He looked quite well behaved, but what he did yesterday, did that seem like something a human would do? Ha-rin felt a bit troubled. He wasn't ready yet to face Song-yeon. After being reborn, the life trajectory he had planned for many years had been completely disrupted again because of this person's sudden appearance. After hanging up the phone, Ha-rin dawdled for another 20 minutes before finally strolling out of the dormitory building. He spoke with a stiff expression. "Didn't we agree on 3 days?" Song-yeon hurried to explain, flustered. "I didn't come today to push you for an answer. I just wanted to see you." He nervously rubbed his fingers. "I said so much to you last night, and I've been feeling uneasy ever since. If I can't see you, I just can't calm down." Only then did Ha-rin notice that Song-yeon's complexion looked a bit haggard. Song-yeon carefully watched Ha-rin's expression. "Ha-rin, you haven't had breakfast, have you? Let me take you out for soup dumplings. How about it? I remember you used to love soup dumplings the most." Ha-rin was indeed a bit hungry, but he didn't want to be led around by Song-yeon. "Let me treat you instead." Just at the cafeteria buffet, only a few steps away. Song-yeon's little scheme fell through on the spot. He had originally wanted to lure Ha-rin out of the school, then drive him somewhere else to hang out. Got a small taste of the date feeling in advance, even planning out the route and strategy. But Ha-rin just refuses to follow his script. In the blink of an eye, they arrive at the cafeteria. Song-yeon watches Ha-rin eat, while secretly plotting how to lure Ha-rin into his own script. But no matter how Song-yeon arranges things, Ha-rin acts like he doesn't see it. In the end, every plan ends in failure. Song-yeon simply asks outright, "Let's go hang out after we eat?" But Ha-rin doesn't even pause. No. The look on Song-yeon's face as he presses for a why is exactly like Ha-rin himself in the previous life. In the previous life, every time he wanted to ask Song-yeon out, he would always be blocked by Song-yeon with a single word, "busy." Now that their positions have swapped, Ha-rin also replies with just one word, "busy." In this life, it's finally Song-yeon's turn to chase after someone in all kinds of ways. Once their roles are reversed, Ha-rin suddenly feels a rush of vengeful satisfaction. This feeling is really intoxicating. Song-yeon is still unwilling to give up. "So busy you don't even have time for a date?" Ha-rin's tone clearly turns cold. "Did I ever say I agreed to date you?" Song-yeon instantly deflates, and his voice drops as well. "All right, that was my mistake." He put on the expression of a wronged little puppy. "Just take it as doing your duty as the host and keep this old classmate of yours company. Okay?" Ha-rin was a bit torn between laughing and crying, and could only take him on a one-day campus tour. Why does it feel like she's been entangled by him? Clearly, Ha-rin didn't see herself as a tour guide, but Song-yeon was always very satisfied, even unable to stop sighing over how nice the campus environment was. Once he got excited, he simply grabbed Ha-rin to take photos together. There was only a click, and the image of the two of them was frozen in that very second. Song-yeon stared at the photo, overjoyed, and the more he looked, the more he felt they were a perfect match. Near noon, the tip of Ha-rin's nose was beaded with sweat from the heat, so she found a bench and sat down to rest. Song-yeon was still brimming with energy. He was having a blast all by himself, snapping away nonstop with his phone. Just then, 2 little fans of Song-yeon ran over. It turned out that Song-yeon even had a bit of fame online and had done voice acting for audio dramas. His fans had even organized a fan meeting. Ha-rin was a little curious. "What kind of audio drama did you voice? What made them so obsessed that they even held a fan meeting just for you?" Song-yeon was a bit embarrassed. Just That kind of BL audio drama. You probably wouldn't be interested. Ha-rin was so shocked it was like she'd been struck by lightning. Song-yun actually liked BL and was even somewhat well known, but in his previous life, he clearly hadn't even liked watching related movies. It seems that without the nourishment of love, once Song-yun feels empty, he very easily runs off to mess around online. Ha-rin actually showed a rare bit of interest. What did you use as your username? I'll take a look later. Song-yun hadn't expected Ha-rin to be interested. His heart instantly filled with joy, but he also felt a bit embarrassed. I'm Song-lin Fengyue. Not having heard clearly, Ha-rin leaned in a little closer. Song what? Song-yun repeated it again. Song-lin Fengyue. The Lin from Ha-rin's name. As soon as Ha-rin heard that, cold sweat instantly broke out. Who could withstand this kind of fancy confession from Song-yun? To chase someone, this boy next door had actually gone and secretly learned something called the 36 poses of turning heaven and earth. Ha-rin spoke slowly. Then what about the strategy guide you originally wrote? Which one of those 36 poses were you planning to use to take me down? Song-yun knew very clearly. Those little thoughts of his had long since been seen through by Ha-rin. Since he couldn't hide it, he simply stopped pretending. He leaned his body toward Ha-rin's side, lowering his voice. Want to know the strategy? Then follow me in person and experience it once. How about it? Ha-rin had only wanted to tease Song-yun, but hadn't expected he had still underestimated how shameless he could be and ended up being countered instead. He raised his hand to block Song-yun from coming any closer, his tone sharp. Back off. I'm not interested in playing these games with you. Song-yun does not back down at all. Ha-rin, what exactly are you afraid of? His eyes are fixed tightly on Ha-rin's lips, his voice carrying a firm, bewitching tone, as if he is going to kiss him in the next second. Just then, Ha-rin's phone suddenly rings. The caller is Yaoi. Alarms instantly go off in Song-yun's mind. He leans in, wanting to hear what is being said on the call. But Ha-rin stands up first and walks away. After a while, Ha-rin hangs up and comes back, saying he has to go back first to observe a surgery his mentor is performing, something they had arranged earlier. With an apologetic look, he says, how about another day? I'll treat you to a meal again. Song-yun is a bit upset. The mentor you're talking about is the one who took you home last night, right? Are you and him really just teacher and student? Really just teacher and student? Ha-rin instantly gets angry. Song-yun, are you interrogating me? Song-yun hastily explains that he's not. But Ha-rin doesn't want to listen anymore. I explained my relationship with him to you because I respect you. But if you don't believe me, it's whatever. Just assume I'm lying to you. With that, he turns around and leaves. Song-yun immediately chases after him. Ha-rin, you misunderstood. It's not that I don't trust you. With his ears drooping, he confesses, all right, I admit it, I am a bit jealous. Song-yun stood behind him, carefully coaxing, don't be angry. If you're in a hurry, I'll drive you there. Ha-rin still shook off his hand. No need. The affiliated hospital isn't far from here. It's just a few steps away. Song-yun wanted to say more, but was mercilessly left where he was. Ha-rin walked in a hurry, heading straight for the hospital. This patient of Kiyome's had a late-stage intracranial tumor. It was almost exactly the same as his condition in his previous life. When Ha-rin rushed to the hospital, he only had time to ask, what's the approximate success rate? Kiyome let out a sigh. 30%. After speaking, he turned and walked into the operating room, while Ha-rin went into another observation room. The screen showed a real-time feed of the operating room. In the blink of an eye, 5 hours passed, and Ha-rin walked out of the surgical building with heavy steps. As soon as he looked up, he saw Song-yun on the bench. The fatigue and exhaustion in his brows and eyes could not be hidden. Ha-rin's mind went blank for a moment. Have you been waiting here the whole time? And the show is about to start, little nagging monster. He had finally steadily pulled the person he loved into his own script. In the previous episode, it was said that Song-yun saw Ha-rin come out. He gave a silly smile. I didn't know which floor you were on, and I didn't dare to call and disturb you, so I could only wait here. The tip of Ha-rin's nose suddenly stung, and the sorrow he had suppressed for so long was on the verge of losing control. Song-yun panicked for a moment, not knowing where to put his hands. What's wrong? Did I make you angry again? Ha-rin blinked and shook his head, saying no. He slowly let out a breath. The patient is gone. Everyone did their best, but we still couldn't save them. Only then did Song-yun realize that the patient was neither a relative nor a friend. He broke off mid-sentence, then suddenly sighed softly. In this line of work, a doctor has to get used to life and death. With a heart this soft, how are you going to be a doctor in the future? Ha-rin just shook his head and said nothing. There was no way Song-yun could understand. His tears weren't just for this patient. It was also because, in that person, he saw another possible ending for himself. Seeing how down he was, Song-yun lifted an arm and pulled him against his shoulder. "Don't think about it. I'm starving. Let's go eat." Ha-rin took out his phone and glanced at it. It was already past 5 in the afternoon. Song-yun had actually been waiting here the whole time, without even having lunch. He looked aggrieved. "Didn't you say you were treating me to a meal?" For a moment, Ha-rin couldn't even form any words. Song-yun looked as if he were about to cry. "I was afraid that if I walked away, I'd miss you again. I wanted to call, but I was scared you'd find me annoying." Ha-rin completely lost any temper he had left. Whether in the last life or this one, Song-yun was simply born to restrain him. He sighed. "All right, let's go, we'll eat first." Song-yun was so excited he looked like he was about to take off on the spot. "My car is parked nearby. I'll go drive it over." Ha-rin paused mid-step and looked back at him. This guy still hadn't given up, still wanted to drag him into his own script. The two of them got in the car, and Song-yun suggested, "Let's eat at Cattle Night." They had been to that place a few times in high school. Later the restaurant moved, and they never went again. He hadn't expected that Song-yun would actually buy it. Ha-rin froze for a moment. Song-yun hadn't even graduated yet and had already started his own business. This pace of growth was so fast it went a bit beyond his expectations. The two of them walked across the plaza. A little girl selling flowers came up to them with a smile and asked, "Handsome guy, want to buy some flowers? Buy a stem for your girlfriend." Hearing that, Song-yun lowered his head to look at the flowers in her basket and even started picking them out in all seriousness. Seeing that he really meant to buy some, Ha-rin stopped him at once. "We're two guys. Why are you buying roses?" The little girl added, half joking and half serious. "You can give them to your boyfriend too." Song-yun's lips curved as he turned back and smoothly followed up, "Exactly." The boy next door lowered his head and gently pressed a kiss to the boy's lips. For this rare, easy moment, the air felt like it had suddenly gone back to the past. In the previous episode, we left off with Song-yun pulling out a rose and asking the girl, "How much is this?" The little girl's eyes lit up with excitement. "Handsome, you're only buying one? If you buy more, I'll give you a discount." From a distance, Ha-rin pointed at Song-yun and warned in a cold voice, "If you're going to buy that kind of stupid thing, don't expect me to get in the car. Either you throw the flowers away, or you go by yourself. Don't drag me along." The little girl was a bit unhappy and muttered under her breath, "These flowers are so pretty. How did they turn into some brain-dead crap?" Realizing he had said the wrong thing, Ha-rin immediately covered his mouth. He hadn't meant to insult the little girl. It was just that Song-yun buying flowers to give him had already stepped on the bottom line of what he could tolerate. Song-yun straightened the roses in his hand, then gently patted the little girl on the shoulder to comfort her. "Don't mind him. He just has a sharp tongue. He doesn't mean anything else." He raised his hand in indication. "These flowers really are pretty. I'll buy all of them. Leave them here with you for now, and when I remember, I'll come back and get them from you." Sensing his kindness, the little girl gave a sweet smile. "Thank you, handsome. I wish you and your boyfriend a long and happy life together." And just like that, the label of boyfriend was forcibly slapped onto Ha-rin. The two of them walked down the road. Song-yun looked to be in an especially good mood. "If you like them, I can give you 999 roses every day. But you seem very resistant." With a face full of disdain, Ha-rin said, "It's not that I'm against flowers. I'm against the fact that the flowers are from you." In his previous life, when Song-yun was pursuing Wai Ru-tung, he had also taken every bit of romance a lover could think of and pushed it straight to the extreme. Wai Ru-tung was moved to tears every single time. But Ha-rin just happened to be the kind of person who didn't understand romance. Every time he saw Song-yun fussing with those flashy, showy things, he would get so grossed out that he broke out in goosebumps. As long as the two of them understood each other, wasn't that enough? Why did they have to let everyone else watch? He opened his mouth and asked, "Giving flowers is also part of your strategy, isn't it?" His intentions having been hit right on target, Song-yun instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Seeing this, Ha-rin's tone sank in warning. "You'd better kill that idea as soon as possible. Keep a low profile, or don't blame me for not saving your face." Song-yun nodded repeatedly in agreement and hurriedly pushed Ha-rin into the Western restaurant. Before they had even sat down, he quietly shot the waiter a look. The waiter understood at a glance and immediately presented the restaurant's supreme card. Ha-rin didn't need to guess to know this was obviously something Song-yun had arranged in advance. He didn't make things hard for the waiter, took the membership card, and said thank you. Right after that, the waiter handed over the menu. Without even looking, Song-yun said directly, What else is there to order? Bring us one of every deluxe set meal in the house. Ha-rin pressed his hand down at once. One of every set meal? Can you even finish that? Don't make yourself look like some upstart who just struck it rich. Okay? The waiter couldn't help thinking to himself. The boss is really terrified of his wife. Ha-rin ordered a steak set meal according to Song Yun's tastes, and then ordered some snacks and drinks for himself. Unknowingly, the two of them started bickering again. They locked eyes for a second, and in the next second both burst into laughter with a "biffed." In that moment, it felt as if that familiar feeling of bantering and arguing from back then had returned. Suddenly, Song Yun gently leaned in. He bent down and pressed his lips to Ha-rin's. The boy next door, who had always loved but could never obtain, finally lifted the lid on the emotions he had been holding down. Ha-rin, what do I have to do to make you fall in love with me? In the previous episode, we said that Song Yun gently kissed Ha-rin's lips and realized he didn't pull away. So he cupped the back of Ha-rin's head, applying pressure, deepening the kiss more and more. When Ha-rin snapped back to his senses, he realized he was firmly trapped and couldn't move at all. It turned out that from the moment Song Yun stepped into the private room, he had quietly woven his net. No matter how I defended myself, I still fell step by step into his trap. Song Yun cautiously savored that bit of hard-won sweetness. But in the instant he lifted his eyes, he crashed into those eyes that held no emotion and no warmth. A sense of frustration that he had never experienced before suddenly pressed down on Song Yun. His passion, obsession, even fervor might, in Ha-rin's eyes, be nothing more than a trivial joke. A nameless fury surged in Song Yun's heart, one he couldn't put into words. Why is it that I lose control over you to this extent, yet you can still look at me so coldly and so steadily? He suddenly lunged at Ha-rin, prying open the other's lips and teeth by force, driving straight in, almost out of control as he plundered. Ha-rin was forced by this forceful and overbearing kiss until he could hardly breathe. He pushed Song Yun away hard. Are you crazy? Are you kissing me or trying to kill me? Song Yun only focused on catching his breath, as if he couldn't hear anything, completely ignoring Ha-rin's struggles. He forcibly locked the other person in his arms. Ha-rin, what on earth am I supposed to do? What do I have to do for you to fall in love with me? He pressed his chin against the hollow of the other's shoulder, his voice choking for a moment. I'm about to drive myself insane. Can't you just put me out of my misery? Accept me or kill me. He couldn't eat day or night, and he couldn't sleep either. What he was afraid of was hearing a rejection 3 days later. All these years, everything he had worked so hard for was just to make Ha-rin look at him a little more and be willing to live that so-called happiness with him. Song Yun raised his hand and pointed at Ha-rin's chest. Ha-rin, tell me, in your heart, what am I to you? Really? Ha-rin fell silent. This almost deranged agony of Song Yun's was actually so similar to his own in the previous life. Song Yun didn't know what meaning there was to his existence in this world. In fact, Ha-rin felt just as lost in his heart. He had originally wanted to avoid Song Yun. Since he had been given another life, he would take a new path. But Song Yun had suddenly broken in and messed up everything he had planned. So what did this second life of his even amount to? Ha-rin could always see in Song Yun the shadow of himself in his previous life, when he was infatuated with Wai Rutung. He had once loved Song Yun, loved him so much that he lowered himself into the dust. Yet in the end, he was tossed aside like an expired substitute. That kind of pain, like a knife piercing straight through his heart, remained crystal clear even after living a second life. Song Yun blamed him, asking why he just refused to accept him. But who could possibly understand the confusion and torment in Ha-rin's heart? He always felt that this Song Yun, who held him so carefully in his hands, was nothing more than a brief illusion granted by the heavens. He would rather coldly watch the joys and sorrows of the world from the sidelines, waiting for the illusion to shatter and the dream to end, so that everything could return to calm. Just then, the waiter knocked on the door. Song Yun wiped his face and forced himself to calm down first. The waiter also sensed that there was something off about the atmosphere between the two of them. After putting down the tray, he immediately turned around and quickly fled. Once the waiter left, Song Yun slowly steadied his breathing, lowered his head, and apologized in a small voice. Ha-rin only shook his head and said nothing. Song Yun picked up the half-cooked fried egg from his own plate and placed it in front of Ha-rin. I remember you've loved eating this since you were little. I always used to fight you for it. When I saw you unable to beat me to it and getting so angry, I thought you were especially cute. From now on, I won't fight you for it anymore. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Ha-rin finally couldn't suppress his emotions anymore. He raised his hand to cover those stinging eyes, but the tears still leaked out through his fingers. Don't be like this, Song Yun. I'm begging you. The childhood friend's kiss slipped further and further out of control, growing harsher, growing crazier, as if he wanted to swallow the boy whole. In the last episode, it was said that Ha-rin covered his face with both hands, tears streaming down. The moment he thought about how Song-yun had used that same gentleness and patience he once used to coax Wai-Rutung to coax him, he only felt it was ironic and pathetic. Song-yun stared at Ha-rin for a long time. The next second, he suddenly pulled Ha-rin into his arms and urgently questioned in his ear. "Actually, you have feelings for me too, don't you?" Ha-rin's face was streaked with tears as he tried, in a sorry state, to push Song-yun away, but Song-yun forcefully pinned down his movement, as if blocking off his retreat. "Ha-rin, what exactly are you hiding from? What worries are you holding in your heart? Tell me." Ha-rin couldn't get a single word out. He only shed silent tears. Drip. Tears that had been held back for years finally burst the dam in this moment. Ha-rin lowered his head, only wanting to push Song-yun away. But Song-yun leaned in again and raised his hands to cup Ha-rin's face. He kissed him over and over, kissing his lips, kissing the ends of his brows, kissing away his tears, until Ha-rin finally couldn't hold it back and let out a choked sob. Song-yun once again invaded his mouth. This time he was as gentle as possible, every kiss carrying comfort, and also a coercive temptation. Ha-rin trembled lightly as he let out a whimper, but Song-yun's hand began to slowly move downward. He lifted Ha-rin's hem and placed his palm on his waist. Ha-rin frantically pushed Song-yun away, his voice trembling. "Don't do this here." It was as if Song-yun had been waiting for this line. He immediately pulled him into his arms. "Then let's go to my room. My company has a single-person restroom, we can go there." Ha-rin bit his lip in secret, desperately trying to cool down the surging desire inside him as quickly as possible. He even forced his voice back to a cold tone. "Not going. You want to take the chance to screw me? Keep dreaming." Song-yun was still unsatisfied and pursed his lips. "So close. Another moment and my 36 curved overtaking moves could finally be put to use." He was still very gentle as he lowered his head to kiss Ha-rin's temple. "I won't force you. As long as you can accept me, I can wait as long as it takes." This time Ha-rin didn't push Song-yun away again. He just thought with a hint of helplessness. What exactly is the relationship between me and Song-yun? The Song-yun before his eyes was like a fierce beast that had only just suppressed its anger, patiently crouching at his feet, looking gentle and obedient. But as soon as he found an opportunity, he would immediately pounce again, each time fiercer than the last, until he completely devoured him. Such a Song-yun felt unfamiliar to him, and also made him afraid. Yet in the more hidden depths of his heart, he just couldn't seem to stop. After dinner, Song-yun obediently drove and dropped Ha-rin off downstairs at his dormitory building. Ha-rin was just about to go upstairs when Song-yun suddenly grabbed his wrist. "Tomorrow? Can I still come to see you?" Ha-rin hesitated for a moment, but he knew very clearly he couldn't turn down a Song-yun who already had victory in his hands. He was silent for a few seconds. "Don't come too early." Song-yun laughed. "Then I'll come at 8. The two of them fooled around for a while longer. In the end, they settled on 10 o'clock. Song-yun gave him a goodnight kiss. Then, as if afraid he would change his mind, turned and hurried away. Ha-rin had already become completely numb to this habit Song-yun had developed over the past 2 days of kissing him at the drop of a hat. Half an hour later, Ha-rin had just finished his shower and was getting ready for bed. "Ha-rin, I'm sorry." Song-yun's voice sounded very dejected. "I'm afraid I won't be able to see you tomorrow." The boy had finally decided to open his heart and accept the price that came with it. Since he couldn't avoid it, then he simply wouldn't. In the last episode, we mentioned that Song-yun apologized and said he wouldn't be able to see Ha-rin the next day because he had to rush back to the city to chair a shareholders meeting. He asked cautiously, "Our 3-day promise, it still counts, right?" Ha-rin gave a low his meaning very clear. It counts. But in fact, Ha-rin himself wasn't sure, which caused him to sleep restlessly the entire night. At one moment, he dreamed of the Song-yun from this lifetime, who went to every length to please him. After a while, he dreamed again of Song-yun from his past life, cold to him, every word like a stab. When he woke up the next day, Ha-rin felt as if his whole body had been hollowed out, even more exhausted than after running 3,000 meters. There was a ding-dong from his phone. Song-yun had already arrived in the city. Ha-rin replied almost mechanically, "As long as you arrive safely, make sure to rest." Song-yun's call came through very quickly. "Ha-rin, I suddenly miss you so much. The old man actually dumped such a big load on me at the last minute and ran off abroad himself. It's really too much." Ha-rin thought to himself, Song-yun's father really does value him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have entrusted him with something so important. "You drove back to D-City overnight? Have you had any rest? Song Yun let out a weary sigh. I've been reading documents the whole time. Only when I saw your reply did I take a moment to call you. Ha-rin's heart suddenly softened, feeling a bit of ache. If he keeps burning himself out like this, his body won't hold up. Song Yun closed the folder. I have to go to a meeting. He still couldn't rest easy and added, I'll contact you again after the meeting. Remember what I told you. I love you. When Ha-rin heard this, his heart suddenly thumped heavily. In his previous life, Song Yun had never spoken to him like this, in such a gentle tone, nor said these kinds of words to him. Perhaps it was because Ha-rin longed too much for his tenderness that he fell for him once again so easily. In this lifetime, Ha-rin spent 4 years deliberately avoiding Song Yun. But Song Yun needed only 1 day to successfully pursue Ha-rin. He hated himself for being like this, yet he had no way to change it. Since Song Yun was born to restrain him, then he might as well stop running. If he could not escape, he should not try to. At least in this lifetime, Song Yun had given him all of his sincere feelings. Even if it was only a dream like flowers in a mirror and the moon in water, he still wanted to love earnestly once within the dream. As for waking up from the dream, they would talk about it after waking. But even as night fell, Ha-rin still did not receive a call from Song Yun. Was the meeting not over yet? Or had Song Yun already forgotten what he had promised him? Just then, the phone suddenly rang. Ha-rin answered almost by reflex, but the person on the other end said, May I ask if this is second young Master Xia? Ha-rin frowned, his heart tightening. Yes, this is he. May I ask who is calling? In this lifetime, his love with Song Yun had ended before it even had the chance to begin. In the previous episode, it was mentioned that Ha-rin learned from the phone call that Song Yun had been sent to the hospital due to overwork, and when he fainted, he hit his head, resulting in a mild concussion. Ha-rin could no longer sit still. That very night, he took a high-speed train to rush to City F. By the time he arrived at the hospital, it was already late at night. The assistant told him that there was a bit of a problem with Song Yun's self-awareness. His emotions had been extremely agitated, so the doctor gave him a sedative, and it was still unclear when he would wake up. Ha-rin pressed his lips together, his eyes full of heartache. Song Yun being forced to this point was his responsibility too. To think that just a dozen hours ago, this person was still whispering sweet words to him over the phone. Yet now, how had he ended up lying in a hospital, unconscious and unresponsive? Ha-rin bent down close to his ear and murmured softly, Song Yun, I'm here. Open your eyes and look at me. Will you? As if something had tugged at him, Song Yun's fingers moved slightly. Ha-rin's heart jolted. Song Yun, it's me, Ha-rin. If you can hear me, then open your eyes. All right? Song Yun's breathing suddenly grew rapid, as if he were struggling desperately in a dream, or enduring a pain he couldn't put into words. He jolted awake, his eyes staring straight ahead, completely out of focus. Ha-rin was startled by him, and in a very soft voice he tried calling his name. Song Yun turned his head to look at him in disbelief. Ha-rin, you're still alive? Ha-rin froze completely for a moment. A terrifying suspicion surged up, draining the color from his face. Could the current Song Yun be the Song Yun from his previous life? Very quickly, Song Yun sank into even deeper confusion. No, that's not right. Of course you didn't die. How could I ever think you were dead? 2 orderlies heard the commotion and rushed in, immediately notifying the attending physician. Ha-rin stood leaning against the wall, feeling cold to the bone, inside and out. He had always felt that in this life, Song Yun's love was too perfect, so perfect it seemed fake. He had clearly long since had a premonition that this unreal dream would one day come to an end. He could no longer hold back his tears. They fell in an endless stream. He had been just a little bit away from accepting Song Yun's love. Drip. He had been just a little bit away from telling Song Yun himself that, drip, he was willing to wait for him. Willing to wait for him. Yet in this life, his love with Song Yun had ended before it even began. Ha-rin didn't know whether he should feel regret or relief. In the hospital room, Song Yun's hysterical voice came in broken bursts. He was on the verge of completely losing control. The attending physician had no choice and could only give him another sedative. Song Yun struggled and shouted, Ha-rin, Ha-rin, where are you? His childhood sweetheart had regained the memories of his previous life. Their relationship was once again pushed into ordeal. In the last episode, we mentioned that Ha-rin forced himself to snap out of his immense loss and dejection. He had no time to be sad here. Song Yun's soul had only just crossed over. Right now, there was an even more tricky matter that had to be dealt with immediately. He took a deep breath and walked into the ward. Doctor, could you let me talk to him first? The doctor turned his head to look at him suspiciously. And you are? Ha-rin's tone was very calm. I'm his friend. Song Yun, as soon as he saw him, immediately clutched at him for help like grabbing a lifeline. Ha-rin, Where did you just go? I thought you didn't want me anymore. With Ha-rin's persuasion, the doctor finally still gave them a bit of space to talk alone. After everyone left the room, Ha-rin closed the door behind him and walked over to sit down in front of Song-yun. Song-yun grabbed hold of his fingers in one clutch, his voice trembling. Ha-rin, I'm not crazy. My head is just too messed up. You have to believe me. The more he talked, the more anxious he became, practically unable to stop, including how he had personally seen Ha-rin stop breathing right in front of him, and even more images all jumbled together in one rush. Clearly, he had never experienced them, yet the sense of reality was as if he had truly lived through it once, especially Loktong. Ha-rin picked up the sentence he hadn't finished. You saw that. You and Wai Rutung were once together in the past, right? Song-yun's mouth fell slightly open in shock. Ha-rin, how do you know these things? Could it really be true? Could it really be true? Ha-rin knew very clearly. Only by first standing in the position of an observer looking at Song-yun could he truly help him. His tone was calmer than ever before. Song-yun, over the next few days, even more chaotic images will pop up in your mind. But you must hold down your emotions and stop alarming the doctors so easily. Song-yun actually didn't really understand. Ha-rin, you must know something, right? Could you tell me? Ha-rin slowly lowered his eyes. Those things don't need to be told to you by me. Once you've sorted everything out in your head, you'll understand on your own. You'll understand on your own. The current Song-yun can only passively receive the memories of his previous life. Intense and conflicting emotions crash together, causing him to lose control again and again. Ha-rin guessed in his heart. If Song-yun turns back into the old Song-yun, then his feelings for Ha-rin might change from love to, they might also change from love to hate. In their previous life, Song-yun and Wai Rutung had clearly been lovers who loved each other so passionately they burned. Yet in this life, by a twist of fate, they had become mere passers-by in each other's lives. Ha-rin didn't know whether Song-yun would vent his anger on him, but no matter what, he had to first think through the worst possible outcome. The boy went soft-hearted for a moment, yet he was directly imprisoned in the room by his suddenly deranged childhood friend. In the last episode, it was mentioned that Song-yun kept slipping in and out of a fitful sleep. Every time he woke up, he would remember some things from his previous life. At first, he would still ask Ha-rin helplessly, which parts are real and which are just dreams? But Ha-rin rarely answered, only letting Song-yun slowly figure it out on his own. In the blink of an eye, 5 days later, the doctor informed them. There's nothing much wrong, he can be discharged. Ha-rin peeled a pear. After peeling it, he handed it to Song-yun and said softly, looks like it's about time for me to go back too. Song-yun glanced at it but didn't take it. Ha-rin, what you mean is, you want to part ways with me? Ha-rin froze for a moment, then suddenly thought of the symbolism of pair/parting. If you want to understand it that way, that's fine. Besides, we were never really together. So where does parting ways even come from? Song-yun opened his mouth, but couldn't get out a single word of rebuttal. It was hard for him to say clearly in his previous life who he had actually loved more. But he knew that in this life, he and Wai Rutung were only gentlemanly acquaintances, as light as water. Yet his feelings for Ha-rin were like a fire that burned hotter and hotter, growing ever more searing. Only at this moment did he understand. Those seemingly unreasonable actions of Ha-rin in the past had actually all been him avoiding him. Seeing that he still wouldn't take the pear, Ha-rin stood up, ready to throw it into the trash can. But Song-yun suddenly grabbed his arm. Stay with me a little longer, okay? I need to handle the discharge procedures, but I don't want to trouble my assistant. Ha-rin felt his heart go numb. Fine, I'll just treat it as seeing you off to the very end. He looked at Song-yun with a cold face. I can help you with the discharge procedures and I can take you home. But from now on, we'll be completely even with each other. They soon returned to the apartment. Ha-rin carried Song-yun's bag into the room. He put the things down and turned around to leave. Suddenly, there was a click behind him. The door was locked. After locking it, Song-yun pulled out the key, her face unreadable. Ha-rin's heart instantly sank, and he rushed toward the door. Song-yun, why are you locking the door? But Song-yun blocked him with one move. Ha-rin, don't go back tonight. Ha-rin struggled to snatch the key. What kind of joke is this? We clearly agreed. Song-yun slowly lifted her head, a playful curve at the corner of her lips, twirling the key once between her fingers. Who said I agreed with you? That's just what you imagined yourself. I never promised you anything. Ha-rin instinctively took a step back. This calm version of Song-yun actually frightened him even more. He forced himself to steady his emotions. I still have to go back to school. Song-yun, stop messing around and give me the key. But Song-yun raised her long arm and flicked it casually. The key traced an arc through the air and went straight out the half-open window, then fell straight down. The boyhood friend whose memories of 2 lifetimes were tangled together lost control on the spot and went insane. Previously on, Song-yun locked Ha-rin in the room and casually tossed the key away. Ha-rin, who was afraid of heights, ran to the window and stuck his head out. The next second, his head spun and his vision went black. Song-yun immediately stepped forward, yanked him back with one pull, and pinned him against the wall in one motion. Ha-rin, be careful. If you fall, that feeling is really unpleasant. You've never tasted that feeling, but I really have. Ha-rin couldn't understand what Song-yun was saying, but the gentler Song-yun became, the more he felt something was wrong, and the more frightened he grew. Song-yun, don't be like this. If you hate me. Instead, Song-yun looked utterly confused. How could I possibly hate you? I barely have enough time to love you. As he spoke, he reached out and wrapped his hand around Ha-rin's fingers. He pressed Ha-rin's hand to his own heart. Ha-rin, stop always thinking about leaving me, okay? Every time you talk to me with that indifferent expression, it hurts so much right here I can't stand it. Ha-rin's whole body began to tremble. Song-yun's heartbeat was terrifyingly clear, carrying an oppressive force that brooked no refusal. As if he had completely become a different person. He began to hate himself for being soft-hearted and regretful all over again. If he had just refused to take Song-yun home from the very beginning, no matter what, he wouldn't be trapped here by this lunatic. Suddenly, it was as if someone had flipped a switch in his mind. Why Rutung was about to go abroad. Song-yun's movement faltered. He clearly couldn't keep up with Ha-rin's sudden change of topic. Ha-rin could tell this tactic was indeed effective. Why Rutung was about to emigrate overseas with his current boyfriend. In an instant, a fierce surge of emotion exploded in Song-yun's mind. It almost tore him clean in two. Song-yun still couldn't help blurting out a question about who Wai Rutung's boyfriend was, and Ha-rin answered without hesitation. But Ha-rin's heart suddenly sank, and a trace of guilt surged up. Things were too urgent. He could only drag Wai Rutung out as a human shield. Song-yun repeated the name Diabidu over and over, and an expression of dawning realization slowly surfaced on his face. Song-yun thought, so it was him, that's right, Diabidu is the one Luotong should be with. Seizing this opening, Ha-rin gave Song-yun a hard shove, then turned and bolted for the door. There's no way Song-yun only has one key. He must have a spare. But where would he hide the spare key? By the time Song-yun came back to his senses, he saw Ha-rin searching everywhere for the key. Song-yun stepped forward in one stride and wrapped an arm directly around Ha-rin's waist. He forcibly dragged Ha-rin over to the edge of the sofa, then bent down and pinned him underneath. This time Ha-rin was truly panicked. As he struggled desperately, he pleaded anxiously with Song-yun. Please let me go. Go to Wai Rutung. I'm begging you. Just let me go. Without a word, Song-yun directly restrained Ha-rin's hands. He lowered his head and bit down on his lips. Only when Ha-rin let out a muffled groan of pain did Song-yun seem to be yanked back to reality, jolting awake from his loss of control. I hurt you, didn't I? As he spoke, he once again sealed Ha-rin's lips, his voice pressed very low. Cooperate a little, I'll treat you well. Ha-rin couldn't tell which lifetime Song-yun was now in control of everything. He could only try his best to soften his tone and coax him gently. Song-yun, let go of me first. Can we sit down and talk this through? In the end, the boy still couldn't escape his childhood friend's forcefulness. In the previous episode, it was said that Song-yun, heedless of everything, pinned Ha-rin down beneath him and refused to let go no matter what. He sounded as aggrieved as a child. You said you would wait for me, but the moment I woke up, you went back on your word. This time, no matter what you say, I won't believe you again. Ha-rin knew very clearly that the person in front of him was no longer the Song-yun who would love him properly. In the last life, he had tasted enough of the grievance and pain of being the backup. And in this life, he didn't want to walk the same old path again. Taking advantage of his distraction, Song-yun thrust his long tongue straight into his mouth. Ha-rin's hands were pinned firmly by him above his head. With his other hand, Song-yun roamed back and forth over his waist and abdomen. Song-yun bit and kissed the side of his neck with overwhelming dominance, not giving him even the slightest space to resist. Ha-rin, I can't wait any longer. Right now. Ha-rin turned his face away, trying to dodge his kiss. Song-yun, stop. If you pull back now, it's still not too late. Song-yun got up and pulled off his own belt, his gaze fixed on him like a predator on its prey. With you, I will never pull back. No one knew how much time had passed. Ha-rin slowly opened his eyes. The strap on his wrist had already been undone, leaving only a single red mark where it had been pulled tight. And his body, too, was covered in scattered little marks. He tried to prop himself up to sit, but his whole body was sore and weak, and he fell back down at once. Song Yun heard the movement and immediately reached out to shield him. "Don't rush to get up. Whatever you want, tell me." Ha-rin didn't even turn his head. "I want to go back to the city, right now, this instant." Song Yun fell silent. Ha-rin went on, "Song Yun, do you even have a conscience? I took leave, rushed over overnight to take care of you, and this is how you treat me." Song Yun lowered his head and gently dropped a kiss on his back, his voice hoarse. "I want to be good to you. I want to be good to you for the rest of my life, but don't." He slowly wrapped his arms around Ha-rin's waist, as if afraid he would run away. "I know that by doing this, I'll make you really angry, but what else can I do? If I don't hold on to you now, I'll really never have another chance." Ha-rin's temper flared up at once. "Song Yun, use those big eyes of yours and look carefully. I'm Ha-rin, not Wai Rutung." But Song Yun turned his gaze away, not daring to meet his eyes. "I know you're not Luo Tong. He and I are already impossible. In this life, I only want to take good care of you." Ha-rin's heart felt as if it had been pricked through by a needle, so tight with pain. "In our previous life, you only reluctantly made do with me because you thought Wai Rutung was dead. In this life, you think there's no way you could ever be with him again, so you plan to cling to me and never let go. Isn't that right?" He was so upset that his eyes burned and tears were almost about to spill over. "In your eyes, am I, Ha-rin, just a stand-in for Wai Rutung?" Song Yun's throat tightened, and her defense sounded very weak. "No." But Ha-rin did not believe a single word. "In my previous life, I never truly hated you, even up to the moment I died, because I chose all of this myself. But in this life, don't force me to hate you." Song Yun completely panicked. "Ha-rin, don't be like this. I'll agree to anything you want." When the boy who had been tormented all night woke up, his mind was filled with only one thought: to have his childhood sweetheart give him a clean end. In the last episode, after Song Yun had taken full advantage, he finally admitted his fault with reddened eyes. Ha-rin had no intention of paying attention to him and insisted on taking the high-speed train back by himself. But as soon as he stood up and walked a few steps, his legs gave out and his whole body pitched forward. Song Yun reacted quickly and caught him at once. He helped Ha-rin put on his clothes piece by piece, his voice tight. "Ha-rin, don't be stubborn. I've already agreed to everything." With that, he scooped him up by the waist. "But don't take the train. I'll drive you back." Ha-rin pressed his lips together and said nothing, only forcing himself in his heart to endure a little longer. Once he got back, he would make a clean break with him. Song Yun drove the car onto the highway. The atmosphere in the car was oppressively low, so quiet it was hard to breathe. From time to time, Ha-rin curled in on himself, not wanting to spend even a second in the same space as Song Yun. Sensing something was wrong, Song Yun immediately asked him where he felt uncomfortable. Ha-rin shook off his hand with a cold face. "Just drive." Song Yun panicked even more, his voice full of worry. "I should still take you to the hospital. Just now, I really lost control a bit." Ha-rin didn't even want to look at him. "Get lost. Stop pretending to be a good person here." Song Yun was almost about to kneel down. "Then I'll drive to the police station and turn myself in. Okay? You can sue me however you want, as long as it makes you feel a little better." Ha-rin finally exploded and shouted back at him. "Is your brain broken? You might not want your dignity, but I still want mine." He only wanted Song Yun to stay far away from him, but Song Yun just stubbornly refused, even if it killed him. Ha-rin let out a soft sigh and simply gave up on trying to keep talking to him. Song Yun's tone was unusually resolute. "No matter what happens, I will never let you go again. You're mine. You were in our last life, and you are in this one too. You can only be mine." Ha-rin stared at his profile in silence for a long time. "Song Yun, you're someone whose obsessions run far too deep. In the previous life, Wai Rutung's death was like a thorn stuck in your heart. No matter how hard I tried, I could never get into your inner world." He turned his face back toward the window again. "And now, maybe my death has become that thorn in your heart. So you made up your mind that, no matter what, you have to make it up to me. But by clinging to me so desperately like this, is it really love or just obsession?" For a moment, Song Yun couldn't answer. To him, love and obsession were the same thing. He loved Ha-rin, so of course he was utterly devoted to Ha-rin. But Ha-rin told him straight out, stubborn attachment is not the same as love. Neither of them could convince the other. Just then, Ha-rin's phone suddenly rang. The screen showed an incoming call, Wai Rutung. He thought for a moment, then still pressed the answer button. It turned out Wai Rutung was about to leave, and before leaving wanted to treat him to a meal. When Ha-rin opened his mouth to invite Song-yeon to go eat together, knowing nothing, Song-yeon thought his own springtime had finally arrived. But Ha-rin turned his head toward the car window. His expression darkened a little. He just couldn't help wanting to make Song-yeon a bit unhappy. The childhood friend, so angry he was about to lose control, fiercely pressed a kiss to the boy's lips. In the previous episode, it was said that Ha-rin, with ulterior motives, took Song-yeon out for a meal. Song-yeon stayed in a bright mood the whole way, thinking there might still be a chance for them to get back together. But the moment he pushed open the private room door, he instantly froze. The sticky sweet scene of Wai Rutung and Diabidu just slammed straight into Song-yeon's eyes. He knew both people in front of him, but the feeling Wai Rutung gave him was already completely different from the previous life. In this life, Wai Rutung avoided the fatal injury at age 17, and his smile was cleaner and more radiant. He was no longer the overly sensitive and fragile Wai Rutung of the previous life, who needed his protection at every moment. Song-yeon's chest suddenly loosened, and only in this moment did he finally confirm. He had really, completely let go. It was just that Ha-rin had brought him to see Wai Rutung, and he was afraid it wasn't as simple as just catching up. Joking as they talked, the two of them took their seats. Wai Rutung's smile was bright as he took the initiative to greet them. "Yo, are you two already together now?" Song-yeon tugged awkwardly at the corner of his mouth. Since Ha-rin made no comment, he didn't dare respond recklessly either. But Wai Rutung didn't notice the strange atmosphere between them, and went on excitedly introducing his own boyfriend. Diabidu immediately picked up on it. The way Song-yeon looked at Wai Rutung was a little off. "You really do have a lot of high school classmates. Don't tell me this is another first love?" Wai Rutung raised his hand and gave the back of his neck a smack. "What nonsense. You're the one who loves to get jealous the most. Aren't you afraid people will laugh at you?" For the next half hour, Song-yeon's expression stayed dark as he kept his head down drinking, knocking back one glass after another. Ha-rin watched him, the corners of his mouth curving in a barely noticeable smile. "He's uncomfortable, and that makes me feel great." After the speech ended, Ha-rin picked up a glass of alcohol and said a few polite words. He tipped his head back and finished it in one go, then stood up to leave. Wai Rutung had just been about to ask him to stay, but when he turned, he saw Song-yeon standing up as well. "Sorry, we came in the same car, so I'll be heading out too." The two people left behind were full of question marks. Why does it feel like Song-yeon has become a different person? Ha-rin had just reached the corner of the stairs when his arm was suddenly grabbed by Song-yeon, who had chased after him from behind. He was yanked around in a spin and dragged straight into the depths of the stairwell, and with a temper burning, Song-yeon slammed him against the wall, caging him in his arms. Forcing down his anger, Song-yeon's voice sank. "Why did you bring me to meet them? You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Ha-rin raised an eyebrow and stabbed back with a cold sneer. "Yes, I did it on purpose," plastering on a smile, saying insincere blessings to the person you love. "How does that feel?" Song-yeon's chest rose and fell a few times, as if he were holding himself back. The next second, he suddenly lowered his head and, like he'd snapped, pressed a kiss onto Ha-rin's lips. Childhood friends who just had a fight, suddenly turning into a pure-hearted puppy, pitifully begging to be taken in. In the previous episode, we saw Song-yeon fiercely bite down on Ha-rin's lips. The more he kissed, the deeper it got, and the harder his bites became. Ha-rin shoved him away with force. He lifted his hand to wipe his lips and said coldly, "Stop biting people at every turn, you lunatic." Song-yeon ground his teeth and growled in a low voice, "I really am about to be driven crazy by you. I already said there's nothing between me and Wai Rutung anymore. Why won't you believe me? Do you want so badly to push me to Wai Rutung?" Ha-rin glared back with reddened eyes. "Yes, I can't wait for you and Wai Rutung to rekindle your old flame. Just stop coming to bother me." Song-yeon once again trapped him in that small distance. He pinned him against the wall, kissing him madly, biting him madly. No matter how Ha-rin punched and kicked, he just refused to stop. Lu Bao said that in the comic, Song-yeon kissed him for a full quarter of an hour before finally letting go of the already exhausted Ha-rin. He lowered his eyes, looking at Ha-rin's lips, kissed until they were red and swollen. His fingertips went soft, and he couldn't help gently rubbing them with his thumb. Ha-rin turned his face away and slapped his hand away in disgust. Song-yeon leaned to his ear and pressed down his voice to say in a low tone, "Ha-rin, I'm sticking with you for this whole lifetime. No matter what, don't think you can shake me off. It's okay if you don't believe me. Anyway, if you live, I live. If you die, I die. This life and the next, I'll stay locked in this with you to the very end." Ha-rin pushed him away again, and snapped, completely out of patience, Nutcase. Song Yun immediately followed. Seeing that Ha-rin was about to pull open the car door, he hurriedly took a step to block him. This car can't be driven. We've both been drinking. Drunk driving is against the law. Ha-rin was blocked so thoroughly he couldn't get a word out. Song Yun smiled, looking both obedient and harmless. I can't get back to the city tonight. How about you put me up for the night? Ha-rin had known he was going to say that. His face went cold. You're a grown man. Go find a hotel yourself. After saying that, he walked straight to the side of the road, intending to flag down a taxi back to campus. Song Yun, however, pitifully tugged at his sleeve. I'm not familiar with this area. How about I share a car with you, and I'll just make do for one night at the hotel from last time. Ha-rin was feeling stifled with annoyance, and just then, his phone suddenly rang. The caller was Song Yun's assistant. The other party asked if Song Yun was with him. Afraid that Ha-rin would get dragged into some new trouble, Song Yun immediately leaned over to listen, only to realize it was his own assistant. He lowered his voice and anxiously waved his hand at Ha-rin, signaling him not to respond. But Ha-rin shifted his body to put some distance between them and, with a blank expression, exposed him. That's right. He had a sudden brain cramp and followed me into the city. Song Yun was dealt a fatal blow on the spot. After hanging up, Ha-rin turned to look at Song Yun, his gaze saying clearly, "You clean up your own mess." Stiffening his neck, Song Yun said, "Things between us still aren't settled. Don't think you can just kick me out like this." Ha-rin let out a cold laugh. "If you insist on staying, I'll call your dad and complain. Tell him you're forcing me to do something I don't want to do." Song Yun felt unbearably suffocated inside. Who was it that had just said, "You may not want dignity, but I still do"? He really was a bit afraid that Ha-rin would go complain to his dad. After all, his dad had done those things in their previous life. If it really blew up, it would be bad. Before they parted, the bamboo horse suddenly bent down and bit the boy hard on the back of his neck. "If I could, I really want to mark you in this way, to leave a scent on you that belongs only to me." Song Yun thought of his previous life. If his dad had known he'd slept with the second young master of the Xia family, he'd definitely have beaten him half to death. But he still hasn't won his wife back yet. To die just like this, he's not willing. He thought for a moment and decided to soften his tone first. "But Ha-rin, I still want to go to the hospital with you tomorrow and have a full body checkup. In the previous life, by the time you were diagnosed, it was already late stage. If we go for a checkup now, maybe..." Ha-rin didn't buy it at all. "I have a physical every year. I'm very healthy right now. I don't need you worrying about me." Song Yun thought about it and realized that was true. Ha-rin studied medicine. In this life, he'll definitely care about his own body even more than in the last one. After that, no matter what excuse Song Yun came up with to try to stay, each one was shot down on the spot by Ha-rin. Song Yun couldn't help thinking, "My wife is this smart. What am I going to do from now on? What am I going to do from now on?" Ha-rin lifted his chin slightly, signaling him to hurry up and get lost. But Song Yun still stood there without moving, his gaze so scorching it was frightening as he stared at Ha-rin. His eyes were clearly off, even carrying a hint of unhinged madness. "Back off!" Sirens blared in Ha-rin's mind, and he instinctively took a step back. But Song Yun suddenly lunged at him and yanked open his collar with one pull. The next second, he bit down hard on the back of his neck, making Ha-rin cry out in pain on the spot. Ha-rin snapped back to her senses and immediately pushed Song Yun away. "What the hell? Are you a dog or something?" Song Yun stared at Ha-rin, as if he had something to say. But in the end, he didn't spit out a single word, turned around, and left. It wasn't until a week later, when Ha-rin came across a Weibo post from Song Yun, that she finally understood what he'd meant with that bite. Ha-rin subconsciously raised her hand to touch the bite mark on the back of her neck, a chill shooting up her spine. Seriously, what a fucking lunatic. The next time they met was already a few days later at a dinner gathering. Throughout the whole meal, Song Yun kept sneaking glances at Ha-rin, seemingly testing the waters. Someone asked him if he had a girlfriend, and after a few seconds of silence, Song Yun said, "There is someone I like, but unfortunately I haven't managed to win them over yet." Ha-rin's hand tightened bit by bit around her wine glass, just praying that Song Yun wouldn't start acting crazy at a time like this. Old Mrs. Xia looked full of regret. "Oh dear, then you really have to step up your game. Whose daughter is she? To be unimpressed even by our handsome and wealthy young Master Song." Song Yun looked as if he were ashamed, lowering his head as he said, "He's wonderful. I'm the one who's not good enough for him, so I have to work harder." As soon as Song Yun's mother heard that, she got excited too. "Son, how come you never mentioned this before? Which family's girl is it? Do you want mom to go speak for you?" Song Yun's gaze swept lightly over Ha-rin, but his voice was firm. My spouse is for me to pursue myself. I originally thought this was a fated connection written in my destiny, but halfway through, he just had to fall for someone else. By the time he finally wanted to turn back, he realized it was all too late. In the previous episode, we mentioned that both sets of parents felt it was a pity that, despite the two families having been close for so many years, they had never managed to become in-laws. Song's mother sighed and said, "Speaking of which, back then Ha-rin's mother even held my hand and said that if this child turned out to be a girl, she would marry her to my son Song-yun as his wife." Song-yun immediately turned his head and asked, "Mom, how come you never told me that before?" Song's mother said, half annoyed and half amused, "The moment Ha-rin was born, he was a boy. How could I possibly force you to marry Ha-rin into the family? You two have stuck together since you were little, so I guess you really are fated. If you can't be husband and wife, being lifelong good brothers is pretty nice too." Song-yun pressed down the restless feeling in his chest. Yet his gaze kept falling on Ha-rin again and again. But Ha-rin didn't give him the slightest reaction. He had already heard about this in his previous life. Back then, he had foolishly thought their fate was already written in stone. But later, Song-yun ended up falling for Wai Ru-tung. Seeing him drinking sullenly, Ha-riang lowered his voice to remind him, "Don't drink too much." Only then did Ha-rin jerk back to his senses, giving Ha-riang an apologetic smile. "I'm going to the restroom." When Song-yun saw him leave, he almost immediately found an excuse and followed after him. Soon, Ha-rin walked up to the wash basin. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to force his mind to clear a little. At that moment, his wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Before Ha-rin could react, Song-yun had already dragged him into a stall and even locked the door behind them in one motion. Ha-rin was still a little drunk, the corners of his eyes tinged red, a hazy mist seeming to veil his gaze, and the sight of it made Song-yun's heartbeat almost spin out of control. Song-yun bent down close to his ear, his voice pressed very low. "You heard what my mom said just now, right? The two of us had an arranged engagement as kids. You were always meant to marry into our family and be my wife." Ha-rin couldn't help but let out a laugh. "Can you not take things out of context? Your mom's exact words were, 'Only if the baby was a girl would she be given to your family as a wife.'" But Song-yun didn't care in the slightest. "Back when you were still in your mother's womb, you were already mine. We're destined to be together. So stop thinking about leaving me." A trace of self-mockery tugged at the corner of Ha-rin's lips. If he had heard that in his previous life, he probably would have gone mad with joy. But now, all that was left was sorrow. Love is like milk. If you leave it too long, it spoils, it expires. As for you, I stopped feeling anything a long time ago. Song-yun cut him off with a low growl. "I don't believe that." As soon as the words fell, he lowered his head, aiming for his lips. But Ha-rin turned his face away first and dodged. Song-yun's voice caught, and he all but pressed against him as he whispered hoarsely, "I don't believe in any expiration date. One day, I'll prove it to you. Pa, one day I will prove it to you." Pa. Song-yun buried his face in the crook of his neck, scorching hot tears pattering down. But Ha-rin's expression was numb, silent and motionless. He just let this man cling to his ear and cry until he trembled. What to do if you climb into bed and your wife rejects you? In the previous episode, it was said that after the banquet ended, Song-yun told his father that he wouldn't be going back to the city for the time being. Mother Song was a bit worried. "Then where will you live these days?" "The old house in the city hasn't been lived in for many years." Old Madame Xia waved her hand after hearing this. "If you've got nowhere to stay, just come to our place and make do for a few days. We'll feed you." Song-yun and Ha-rin were stunned at the same time, one unable to hide the joy on his face, the other unable to suppress the worry. Father Song hurriedly smiled and tried to decline a few times, but old Madame Xia made the decision directly. "What's with the politeness? Tonight, just let Song-yun squeeze in with little Lin in his room." As soon as Ha-rin heard that, his face changed instantly, and he had just opened his mouth to refuse. But Song-yun dashed over in one stride and hugged old Madame Xia enthusiastically. "Thank you, Grandma. Grandma, I love you." Ha-rin gritted his teeth and shot Song-yun a vicious glare. Right in front of Grandma. He couldn't leave the old lady with no way to step down. This man was really a dog. Nighttime in Ha-rin's room, Song-yun finished laying out the bedding and lay directly on the floor. He tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep no matter what. Song-yun sat up and first probed, asking, "Ha-rin, are you asleep?" He climbed up to the edge of the bed using both his hands and feet, then pressed his voice down and asked, "Can I get in bed and sleep?" A muffled voice came from under the covers. "Get back on the floor and stay put." Song-yun still wouldn't give up. "The bed is so big. Why do I have to sleep on the floor?" He had just lifted his hand, about to flip the covers. Ha-rin suddenly sat up. "Song-yun, Do you know why I still let you into the room in the end? Song Yun froze for a moment. Why? Ha-rin's face was so dark it was terrifying. Because I put a throwing knife under my pillow. If you dare mess around again, I'll chop you with one stroke. Song Yun broke out in a cold sweat on the spot. He immediately surrendered and quickly retreated to the side of the bed. Calm down. Let's talk this out. Ha-rin couldn't help yelling at him. I want to talk it out too, but search your conscience. Have you ever been reasonable? Before the words had even fallen, the room suddenly shook. Song Yun lost his balance and his whole body fell straight down, his head knocking against the corner of the bed with a thud. The pain made him bare his teeth and grimace in an instant. He didn't have time to care about the pain. He immediately scrambled up, grabbed Ha-rin's arm, and rushed for the door. Hurry, come out with me. It's an earthquake. But Ha-rin just sat there in a daze, not moving at all. You can feel it? Song Yun pointed at the bump already swelling on his forehead. It was so obvious. How could he not feel it? Look at how badly I just fell. Ha-rin calmly shook off his hand. This isn't an earthquake. Now it was Song Yun's turn to be stunned. Jama's heart slowly began to move. Unable to sleep until dawn, Song Yun came to school with a pair of very dark eye bags. As soon as he entered the classroom, he saw Ha-rin leaning by the window, which made that person look even paler and colder, clean and delicate. For a moment, Song Yun felt a stab of regret. Looking at it now, Ha-rin was no longer the way he was in his memories. He seemed taller, thinner than before, and more attractive as well. In the air, an indescribable trace of awkwardness slowly spread out. He took a deep breath. Ha-rin, let's talk. How could I possibly fuss with a drunk? Song Yun was stunned for a second. Then why did you block me? You at least have to give me a reason. Ha-rin didn't even lift his head. But once again, Ha-rin cut him off. Birds of a feather flock together. People group with their kind. He felt a little unconvinced and had originally wanted to explain a bit more. Juswo felt very wronged. The eldest son-in-law had only asked her to step out for a moment. He hadn't said he wanted to talk to her. The moment for that conversation had already passed, and the two of them could only stop for now. Ryu Chuan stared at his phone. So focused it was as if he couldn't hear anything around him. The boy personally saw In-ma and his white moonlight kissing. He almost instinctively turned around and ran. Fate, this kind of thing is truly ironic. Song Yun scratched the back of his head somewhat awkwardly. Many people said he was good-looking, but they even solemnly compared him to the peerless bottom in boys' love novels. That cold and sharp-tongued guy. Some people online say that kissing someone of the same sex is no big deal, so he agreed. Song Yun was a bit impatient and took advantage of the moment when there happened to be no one in the classroom. Wai Rutung still wasn't at ease and lifted his eyes to scan the room again. He closed his eyes and directly leaned in for the kiss. Wai Rutung felt as if he had been heavily struck, his whole body frozen in place. Hadn't they just finished running laps? Ha-rin didn't give him any time to sort out his thoughts. Only then did Wai Rutung breathe a sigh of relief. Then Ha-rin went all out and started chasing him. As for Wai Rutung, Song Yun also gradually lost that initial flutter of their first meeting. When the white moonlight got angry, Ming and In-ma simply went with the flow and got together. Wai Rutung nodded, set his tray down steadily, and sat diagonally across from Ha-rin. Ha-rin weighed his words for a while before finally speaking. Wai Rutung hadn't expected that. As soon as he opened his mouth, this would be what he asked. Why ask that? The surroundings suddenly grew quiet. So quiet it felt as if this line of conversation were about to end right here. But Ha-rin suddenly went on. Since you're together now, that would only make Ha-rin look down on him even more. Wai Rutung turned his head back and smiled brightly. You don't need to worry about that. That night, after evening self-study ended, Song Yun froze for half a second. Ha-rin sent Juswo away. Song Yun was struggling over whether to speak first and break this silence. But isn't this path exactly that little road Ha-rin has always taken her along? Jean. Ha-rin continued helplessly. Are you sure you like men? Ha-rin stopped walking, turned his head to look at her. Song Yun, for the sake of our brotherhood of over 10 years, I'll tell you a few heartfelt words. Obviously, Ha-rin was actually a few months younger than her. Ha-rin earnestly and patiently said a lot, telling her that she had to become stronger, as long as the person by her side was Ha-rin. I just received a notice from the homeroom teacher this morning. Ha-rin only shook his head, his tone very light. Song Yun, we're destined never to go back to how things were before. Song Yun wanted to open her mouth and call out to him, but it was as if she suddenly lost control and took that beloved mountain bike. Song Yun slammed it hard onto the ground. So upset it was as if she were about to burst out of the screen. Ha-rin didn't say a final goodbye to Song Yun and went straight to the advanced class. Back when the three of them played together, they were really happy. He couldn't hold back and asked again, Tell me, How has Songyun been doing lately? That 1 meter 50 tall Songyun. What would she be like if she really got serious? He hesitated for quite a while and still asked, then what about him and why Rutung? Now he can already say a few more words to Songyun. Harin was stunned for a moment. You mean, team up to play a game together? Ju Svo thought about it. Ever since you changed classes, if in this life Songyun could show a bit more drive, maybe he could get into a better university. He suddenly felt that he was worrying himself sick for nothing. Once again, Songyun achieved what he called a miracle. With his current ranking, getting into the advanced class was only a matter of time. But Ju Svo told him that Songyun had refused to go to the advanced class, an unfamiliar number, yet it stubbornly kept calling again and again. Harin had no choice but to pick up. He heard the other person lower their voice and say, "Happy birthday." It was a voice so familiar it could not be more familiar. Harin's chest suddenly tightened hard, as if something had pressed down on it. Songyun. His number was still lying on Harin's blacklist to this day. The call from the person who had tied his heart.